Welcome back, advocates. Welcome back. Happy 2024. Happy 2024. I'm super excited about being back with you. And I wanted to start a little bit early before we bring on Greg. A lot has happened since I'm getting feedback. I have to solve this. I apologize. Let me figure this out, folks. I apologize. Well, I'm going to take this out for the time being, and just let you know, I'm super excited about having Greg on tonight. It just seemed like the perfect guest to start the new year with. There has been so much that has taken place since we were last together in December. And just in my personal life, a lot has taken place. We'll catch up on that. I want to start by saying thank you to Jules and Gothic Brina and the other moderators who are just incredibly helpful to making sure that these. I'm getting delayed feedback. Yeah, if you can, thanks. My technical advisor that's my microphone. Can you figure it out? Yeah. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. But thanks to Jules, thanks to Gothic Brina for keeping the chat running well. Thanks for all your hard work and your patience, all the moderators, all the work that you do to make this production work. Shout out to Sally in the UK, who has done some unbelievable graphics and memes. She makes me laugh, and you'll see a couple of them today. There's just a delay.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay. So anyway, we'll figure this out. But Sally, thank you. Keep the laughs coming. Most of all, I want to say thank you for the incredible community that we're building. I was talking with somebody earlier, and actually it was Jules, and I was talking about how this is like my little Minecraft, and I get to create the world that I want, and all of you have joined it, and you are giving me an environment that allows me to have positive people around. I've never had this problem before, so I apologize. I hope this isn't how the year's going to go. But I couldn't get online a little while ago because I was having a lot of back problems. I was traveling with my family, and maybe it was the luggage, maybe it was the airplanes, maybe it was the moving from place to place. But I had as bad a back pain as I've had in many, many years. And when I shared that with the community in the chat, the positive best wishes, prayers, suggestions, ideas that I got from you did more to swell my heart than anything else. You guys are amazing. I mean, just the love and the support that this group shares is unlike any community I've ever seen on any social media community, including Reddit. But I'm proud that it's us, and I really want to see this community grow with like-minded people who are here to make things better. So do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then let's share this with others. Um, that's the last pitch. I will tell you that I'm a little worried about the weather. We are in the midst of a tornado watch or a tornado warning. I don't know which one. We had tornadoes touch down in the Tampa Bay area about 45 minutes ago. I hope that the worst of it is behind us, and I hope that our internet service stays up and our power stays on. But I'm a little worried about that. If you are in an area that's being impacted by weather, I know it's widespread. By all means, please take care of yourself. Make sure that you are safe. It's absolutely critical that you look after yourself first. Again, as we've talked about before, take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. I was going to do a tribute to juror number one. Paul is a little bit of a folk hero. He had his integrity challenged pretty significantly by the Johns Hopkins lawyers repeatedly. And he was called into a situation that no juror ever prepares for. And he did remarkably well. He held his head up high. He appeared in open court without any shielding, without any pixelating, without any attempt to hide. And I've talked with Paul and I've talked with his wife, Yoli, Hippo Lover. And they did that purposely because he did nothing wrong. And he wanted everybody to know that. And so Paul's my hero. Paul did an amazing job, as you would expect of a 15-year law enforcement officer, right? I toyed with the idea of wearing a tribute shirt. That's my juror number one shirt. My wife vetoed the idea, thought it was a little too casual, but hey, the year is early. Maybe we'll get there. I did downgrade to a more comfortable look because several of the audience members have asked when I would sport a Mr. Rogers look with a cardigan. I will tell you, it's a little warm for a cardigan. We had a high of about 63, 64 yesterday, which is great sweater weather. Today it's in the mid 70s. It's a little more difficult. So the cardigan will come. The Mr. Rogers look will come. But for right now, you're going to get the Tommy Bahama look. So again, we will. I have received my instructions to make sure that we hear Greg's laugh tonight. I have received my instructions to bring Charlie the Wonder Dog on. Right now, my super creative daughter is down in the Triple G kitchen working on making some key lime pie that we will all enjoy after we finish talking with Mr. Anderson tonight. But I just wanted to I wanted to make sure that we give her opportunity to finish her creative process, and then at some point she is under instructions to bring Charlie up to join all of us. So hopefully we can make that happen sooner rather than later. But Charlie will be joining. Let me just pull this up. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Trying to make sure I can follow all of your comments. Live, and live. Good. Where are my comments? Oh, this will be frustrating, folks. There we go. Caroline, I may need your help. Oh, well. Okay. For now. So again, tonight we have Greg joining us. I have invited him to expect a more casual setting than the last time. When we talked a month ago, we were pretty fresh off of the verdict, and we were in the throes of getting the early indication of just how nasty the attacks were going to be on Paul and his wife Yoli. They made some pretty outrageous allegations. Sorry. We're going to talk with Greg about that. And one of the things in particular that I want to make sure that we talk to Greg about is the slapdown that was weaved through every single syllable of Judge Carroll's denial, which was issued on January 2nd, the day before the interview with Juror 1. I went back and I watched my rebuttal testimony where we started to talk about the Joint Commission and what have you. And there was some testimony that took place outside of the site of the jury. And there was a moment where there was a look on Judge Carroll's face where I think he felt that he had gotten played. And wow, did that come through in his denial issued January 2nd. So I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to talk with Greg about that. And what I would invite you all to do is to make sure that you are submitting questions in the chat. You can use Super Chat if you wish. I understand that costs extra money. If you don't want to use Super Chat and you want your question to stand out so that the mods can pick up on it, I ask you to start your chat with all caps question. And that way, hopefully, the mods can identify it for me and get that into the conversation. So if you have questions for Greg or for me, please make sure that you highlight it with question, all caps, put it into Super Chat, tag it one way or the other. Just make it easy on the mods. We've got quite a number of people joined us already tonight, and I want to make sure that we get everything visible. My Luisa, thank you very much. Want to make sure that we are able to get your questions to Greg. It's fantastic to have him joining us tonight. I'm going to bring Greg in now. The esteemed lead attorney for Team Maya, all around good guy,
I'll pay you off later.
and somebody who I am actually super proud to, as of 2023, call my friend. Greg, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Joe. I love being on your show, and boy, have you really kicked it off well. I've never seen a show take off like this. It's pretty amazing. I'm happy to be here. I'll be here anytime you need me. And I think it's been, I don't get a chance to see it as much as I'd like, obviously, but it's been fascinating so far to see what you've done with the witnesses. So this is what, your third career after OBGYN and then hospital executive and now TV celebrity, right?
I will tell you without hesitation, I will tell you that I did not have this anywhere in my 5-year plan, Mr. Anderson.
That much I believe. Yeah. Strange how life works, isn't it? And it was all just a phone call from Steve Heese, right?
That's how it started. Yeah.
Really
yeah.
Was fate, I think.
Well, it's interesting, Greg, because one of the things that I think you and I have talked about before in our casual conversations is that you never know where opportunities are going to come from, and you have to keep your eyes open for them. You do that brilliantly when you're in a trial, and it shows in your cross-examination. It shows in the way that you shift your questioning based on what you're hearing. It's quite a skill you've acquired over the years, sir.
Well, thank you. The attorney for, and I'm going to screw up his name, Turf.
Robert Turfs. Yeah.
Yeah, Bob Turf said something to me just the other day, and he said, it seems like in so many cases, my best witnesses are for the other side and my worst witnesses are for me. and I thought about it, and that's a sign of a fine trial lawyer and I'm glad they got to him because that's exactly right. And you have to really pay attention to what's happening in the courtroom. It's like flying an airplane or piloting a boat in a difficult situation, difficult inlet. You have to be aware of everything around you, and you have to really concentrate on what the witness is saying. And so many lawyers do not have that presence of mind. They don't. I'll give you an example. In one of my, I had a nice win back in 2012, 2014 against General Electric for a horrifying accident that became known as Iron 44. And I subsequently wrote the book on. And in the middle, I was watching the opposition, and they, of course, hired a zillion lawyers from New York and Washington and everywhere else. One of them, who was the lead, turned into the lead trial counsel, similar situation to this, didn't start out that way, but ended up that way. Let's just call him Kevin. I looked at him one of the first times that he was crossing my people, and I saw he had a notebook, and it was open. And there were a list of questions, and the questions were in blue. And then the response he wanted was in red. And then he had a second response in yellow. And every one of the questions he asked was like that. And I watched him through the whole thing, and I saw him just tick off, the responses to his question, not ever listening really to what the witness was telling him. And there were some times there in that trial when I was cringing over what some of my witnesses were saying on his cross, but he never picked up on it because he was so busy being organized that he forgot to be a human being. That's fatal.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did he do when he didn't get the answer that was in blue or yellow?
Mostly he flailed around. Danger, Will Robinson, warning. He
I've got it.
It would flabbergast him. He just didn't know how to react. I mean, it's just Lost in Space reference there, but
Yeah.
he had an inability to pivot and to shift his argument, and that's one of the biggest problems, issues, techniques, whatever you want to call it, in trial lawyering, is that you have to be able to pivot instantly. You have to be able to shift your entire case if something comes out wrong that you didn't expect, but is very, very cogent and very powerful to the jury. And so what he did was just keep on going and doing what he was doing, which was to ask a question and listen to a response. And if it fit within his red or yellow response, check it off. And if it didn't, check it off anyway and move to the next question, which is very ineffective. That's not how you cross-examine people, certainly not how I do.
Well, what I thought was interesting was when we talked last time, Greg, you surprised me when you said that you do your best cross when you don't prepare. And I'm sure that was
didn't we?
I think I take that was somewhat hyperbolic, but maybe don't over prepare.
Well, my horrifying flail at the first part of Kathy Beatty shows you what happens when my type personality over prepares, because I had so much knowledge in there.
Yeah.
And so much to work with. And I forgot some of the key points that we know as trial lawyers, which is get in, get out, make your points in the first 5 to 10 minutes, because after 15 or 20, you've lost them.
Yeah.
It's the TV generation, 22 minutes. Right? So if you don't get in there and stun them with the right questions and answers in that first few minutes, you sound like Charlie Brown's mom or teacher. And so the best cross-examinations that I had, and I think in this trial I did pretty well on cross. It's definitely my forte.
No doubt.
And the best ones were when I just do what I do, which is I know the facts. I know what the jury's heard. I don't care anymore about what was in this deposition or in that interrogatory answer or anything else. I only care about that tiny little world we've constructed with 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor, and the information that is being adduced there. And I use that information and essentially just common sense and a bit of irony to point out what total bullshit the other side is putting on.
But you know what, Greg? I think that you and I both have made a point to build our careers based on active listening.
Mm-hmm.
You are a very good listener. You don't miss anything.
Yeah, much more than reading it, to the point where I get Jennifer, my beautiful wife, to read a lot of depositions and motions to me, because I absorb so much more through the hearing than I do reading. I mean, I finally got diagnosed. I mean, I've got, as everybody who knows me, a little ADD, but I've also got some dyslexia. And so reading, and particularly numbers and things like dates and times, really hard for me. They get transposed in my brain very easily. Yeah. But if I hear it, then it gets embedded and I use it. So most of the time I will wait and hear it, and I hear everything that goes on in the courtroom. Well, that's not true. That's bullshit. I hear everything that's within my quadrant, if I can say that. Yeah. My corner of the courtroom, with the judge over here to my left, and the witness right between them, and the jury over on my right, and that's my quadrant. and that's where things happen.
Yeah.
And so within that quadrant, I pay attention to every single thing that happens, including if one of my bailiffs, like the wonderful Nick, our bailiff at trial. I mean, I got so much out of just watching Nick's facial expressions as he listened to the trial. I mean, he was just like having a jury consultant right there. I mean, you could just see it on his face. There's nothing hidden on this guy's face. And if somebody was saying something that was complete BS, I mean, he can't obviously do a lot because he's professional. But I watch him closely, and I watch that slight little eye roll or that little put the head down and just a slight shake like this. You had to be watching him, but if you were watching him, you knew what normal people, non-lawyer people thought about whatever the evidence testimony was.
He didn't give up much. He had a pretty good poker face. He was remarkably professional. Again, that was my first time in that situation, but he was very professional. I mean, I certainly didn't expect anybody to do a Superman over the bench like happened in Las Vegas earlier this week. I think he would have made the tackle. He
would have made the tackle. He was ready to go. And we had a lot of conversations about escorting certain witnesses, and particularly the Kowalskis, in and out of the courtroom. And we just had a fantastic staff there. And all of my bailiffs were wonderful. And when I say, you know, the facial gestures and stuff, if you're not a trial lawyer, maybe a psychiatrist or psychologist or doctor, you would miss 95% of it. It's not things that most people look for. He was highly professional that way, but you've got to be a student of human reaction. And if you are, then he'd be great. But, you know, I've been in courtrooms where bailiffs have had to come over the railing, and I've been there when they should, but didn't. So I'm glad he was there.
Yeah. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned the fetching side of Attorney Anderson. How's Jen tonight?
She's doing very well. I hope she's watching it. She might have gotten distracted with one of her shows, but we've had a tough night here. We've had I don't know how many tornadoes in the area. We've been under a tornado watch for the.
As did we,
yeah. We had the kids in the closet for a couple hours.
Wow, so, it's frightening, and I don't think people really understand how frightening it is.
She just came in to let us know she's right here. She's watching.
Attorney Anderson, how are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
There he is, my beautiful wife, the one that keeps me in line and reads my depositions to me.
So Jen, I mentioned it in the messaging leading up to tonight, but I don't know whether you gave Greg permission. But Greg, this one's for you. It's a nice bell glass.
Yep. Yeah. There. It looks. What is that? Now that's not obviously part of your incredible whiskey Scotch collection. So that's nice Pinot.
My better half decided that we were drinking her favorite wine, Bell Glass Cabernet.
Isn't amazing the way that happens? Amazing. And
cheers to you, sir.
Funny enough, the choice of Chardonnay tonight came from Jennifer. So we're on a Sonoma Couture. I have my Duke cup. You told me I could have a little wine, so I've got my Duke cup, and I'm
there. You go. Actually, that's my favorite Chardonnay to have, around the house for us. But we were out. I guess it was a busy Christmas and holiday season.
You know, I poured this, and of course I overserved myself. And I was thinking about that Saturday Night Live character, Tim Meadows, who does the ladies' man.
The ladies' man.
When my Kowalski and Coke is done, I guess so maybe with my Chardonnay, that's my test now.
So
the audience has had quite enough of you, Greg. Go away.
So speaking of Jen, I want to address a question / concern that was raised by one of the audience members earlier. And I want you to, you don't have to go into great detail, but one of the audience members said, "Can you please convince Mr. Anderson to go on holiday and take some downtime?" And I know that you did take some time away and visit with Jen's family. But so I just wanted to open the door for that. Let the audience know that you did get to exhale after the motions hearings on the 15th of December.
Well, first, thank you so much. And your audience is fantastic. And
Aren't they aren't they amazing?
and Rob's and Megan's and the other folks I have had the privilege of appearing before, and thank you so much. It's with me, and it might have been a product of swimming, where you train and train and train and train and train, and then you have the big meet. You know, it's either nationals or Olympic trials or whatever it is. But for me, I have a really hard time truly relaxing until I think the deed is done, the effort culminates. And so we did go up to Idaho. Unfortunately for the kids, who just were going nuts indoors, we only had snow on Christmas Day, which was nice, but it was only about an inch. And where we have a place up in Sandpoint, it was 60 miles from the Canadian border, and we're used to having, like 4 or 5 feet of snow on the ground. And so just having a drizzle here and there was kind of a bummer. So it's cold and rainy. For me, I pretty much do the same thing, which is I find a book I like and snuggle up next to the fire and wait for the kids to drag me outside. But I'm quite contented regardless of what the weather is. But I have not really had a vacation in 5 years. And that's the truth. I have not totally relaxed. I was talking to Dr. Richards, Scott Richards. I talked to him tonight and then a little while ago. And he said, "I want my friend back." And he's talking about that concentration to get the job done and how hard it is for me to leave that even relatively momentarily
Yeah.
to concentrate on other things. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not paying attention to the kids. I mean, that was a good Grayson basketball practice last night, and Lacey tomorrow, and talk to Caroline every day. So, I'm involved with the kids and Jen and I try to get lunch. I'm doing those things that need to be done, and I enjoy doing them. But in terms of total relaxation, I don't think I've really totally relaxed the way I used to be able to for 5 years.
Yeah.
No matter what I'm doing, I remember we went scuba diving with this. It's so horrible. And, I'm down there, I was in the Keys, and I'm down there just cruising around a reef I've known for 40 or 50 years now. And, and something pops into my head about the case. I'm like, this is total BS. What am I doing? And so, yeah, it is for me, just with my personality, to get completely relaxed until I feel the job is done.
It's funny because I'm just reading through some of the questions that the audience has submitted, and a listener, Doc Patria, says, "Do you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, I should have asked her ... Well, it sounds like Doc diagnosed you perfectly.
That sounds like experience talking there. Yeah, they say there's 3 cases that you try. There's the one that you have put together meticulously in your head and on paper before you try it. Then there's the one you actually try. And then there's the one you try about 10,000 times in your head afterwards, thinking of all those questions that you could have asked or tactics you could have used, and just totally Monday morning quarterbacking the whole thing. So yeah, that's true. I sleep well, fortunately, but it's hard to get out of your head something so impactful and emotional. Well, I'll never get it out of my head. They say trial attorneys only have X amount of trials in them.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
every one of you probably have some listeners old enough to remember the OJ trial and what a big deal that was with the
for
Dream Team.
sure.
And do you know that 4 out of 5 of those lawyers were dead within 3 years after that trial? And not old guys either.
Yeah.
You know, they're very, very taxing on you.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. Relax.
Well, we need you to stick around, sir. So make sure you take care of yourself.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my
Yeah.
best. I'm here with you. I'm hanging out with my friend and having some wine, talking to good people. That makes me happy.
Well, thank you. I'll tell you, Greg, I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversations that we've had over the last month. I wish that I was able to share them in real time with the audience, but
Without an FCC problem.
yeah. So I want to get to some of the questions that Jules pulled together for me from the audience. A lot of them really have to do with sanctions, and listen, be careful where you tread. I'm not asking you to make any enemies here tonight, but there's an awful lot of animosity, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of shock about how aggressively the JHACH attorneys managed the room during the 8 or 9 weeks of the trial, but particularly the way that they went after not only Juror 1, but his wife as well, and Deborah Salisbury. So there's a lot of folks who are watching now who want sanctions, but there seems to be maybe some prevailing wisdom on some of the other YouTube channels that we're unlikely to see any.
All right.
Are sanctions granted easily, or are they a tall hill to climb?
Before Judge Carroll, we got sanctions entered twice against the defense, but we didn't get to the point, although the prior courts we could have done it, we just didn't get around to it, the actual award of fees and costs. When Judge Carroll came on, I think his first impressions of us, me and the plaintiffs, and particularly me, not so much Nick or anybody else, me, was he didn't know how to take me, and I don't know that he really trusted me, and I don't know that he kind of like bought my rap, more or less. And I think that was true up until about halfway through the trial. So I don't know whether it was that or just his style or just being an efficient judge, but he granted sanctions here, there, 3 times, I think, against the defense, which they deeply deserved, and even once against us for not giving over some documents on time. We were supposed to give them on a Friday afternoon, and we got them to him Monday morning. And I always thought he was doing that because he wanted to make the playing field look level, because he entered a bunch of sanctions against him. But one thing he didn't do, which I think he probably regrets now, to the extent he has any regrets over this, is that he didn't actually impose the money award, if you will, the money penalty. Because when that happens, you've got to explain it to your client or your partners. The court says, okay, well, you owe the plaintiff $7,500 for putting him through 15 hearings and at least 25 motions just to get at something that you should have given over within 2. And So he would say, we will clean up all of this at the end, which was fantastic for the defense because they're getting paid by the hour. They're getting paid
Yeah.
huge money. They're actually being encouraged to act like they did. So no matter what they did, they got pretty much a slap on the wrist, but no monetary sanctions that they had to report back to the client or to anybody. With us, though, it was a different story. If you had to spend 15 hearings to get at those cell phones and all those motions just to finally get those brief texts, which it shows you the power of persistence, I think helped swing the trial. The ketamine girl, and I've seen this before and all that. But that really hurts. It hurts when you are not getting paid until the end of the case, the contingent fee.
Yeah.
Because you are taking resources away from handling other clients, and those other clients deserve to be treated just as well as the Kowalskis. And if you don't treat them just as well as the Kowalskis, well, they're going to go find another attorney who will. So when you have them, when you have the judge say, bad lawyer, but we'll talk about it at the end, the bad lawyer gets the message, oh, heck, it doesn't matter what I do. I can do anything. And then because the theory is by the end, and I understand where Judge Carroll's going with that, because in most cases, by the end, the two sides have worn each other out on the sanctions part, and usually they can part company with, not worrying who shot John and who got more. In this case, it was a little different because one of the reasons that the defense was so completely and utterly out of control in this case was they were fearless, absolutely fearless. And that's why, like a spoiled child, you saw the reactions of Howard Hunter trying to stare down the judge until Judge Carroll said, "Don't look at me like that, Mr. Hunter," or Ethan Shapiro bursting through the doors, cussing out the jury and the Kowalskis before the whole verdict had been read, and all of that other behavior, which is just horrifying. And in federal court, you probably find yourself in a holding cell downstairs below the courtroom.
Yeah, he dropped plenty of F-bombs as he was heading down that hallway, that's for sure.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
It was not.
So I just want to, on behalf of the advocates, there's an awful lot of us, myself included, hoping that their misdeeds and their bad behavior does get addressed with sanctions, some acknowledgement somewhere. And listen, I have profound respect for the judicial temperament on display by Judge Carroll. I think he did a remarkable job.
He really did.
When he took not one, but 2 5-minute timeouts, rather than lose his ever-living mind, around the globe. I mean, with the global audience watching on the internet, right?
He did that even without the audience.
That took tremendous self-control, discipline, maturity, temperament.
Yeah. I've seen judges do that before, but never to this extent, which is a bit pathetic when you think about it, because judges should not have to leave the bench to take a timeout because they're going to lose their ever-loving temper at something one of the lawyers does. That is not allowed under the rules of professional responsibility, professional conduct. And to answer the question about will there ever come a time, so I'm with everybody in the audience. I think there should be a 3 to 4, 5 day evidentiary hearing where everybody in the country gets to hear and see what went on in these depositions and what went on in some of the hearings and all the times that we were promised documents, ordered to receive documents, never got them, got halfway answers, then found out, I'll give you an example. The other nurse that appeared with the Kathy Beatty stripping Maya down there and look, yeah. We had been looking for her in every possible way for 5 years.
Really?
We knew there's somebody else in there.
Yeah.
Interrogatory after interrogatory, question after question to witness after witness. Oh, I have no idea who that could be. I don't know. There's a lot of people going in and out. How could you not know with risk management, managing the whole thing? So I finally backdoored it by pointing out in an email, which I mistakenly shared with Howard, but didn't address to him, just addressed it to my inner counsel, and somehow his name slipped on it, that said that that's great. Now we can, Maya can testify to whatever she wants about what that witness said, because there's nobody there to rebut her. Wonder of wonders. No later than 5 days, we had her name, how long she'd been there, and that she was going to be a trial witness. No lie. So that kind of stuff, that kind of nonsense should be brought to task. I think Judge Carroll is over it. He doesn't want to do it. He's made that pretty clear. But from my point of view, I absolutely want the public to know, as they will if we're allowed to present our fees going back as far as I'd like. Let me explain that. We filed proposals for settlement 45 days before the April 2022 trial. So because they didn't beat those, we get fees from that date onward, which is a lot of time and a lot of effort.
For sure.
But it doesn't encompass the previous 4 years.
Yeah.
And so there are requests for admissions where we say admit or deny that this is a fact, like Maya had CRPS, where they denied them at the outset. And one of the sanctions for that is attorney fees and costs. So we're filing a motion where we're going to ask the court to look at the sanctions, the responses to requests for admissions, and then later the failure to, or us beating the proposals for settlement. And we want to put all that together and ask the court to at least hear evidence reaching back to the start of this case.
Wow.
Because the story that will be told of what went on in this case will stun the legal community. It will stun people who never even thought about something like this. The general public will be horrifyingly fascinated by all the stuff that went on. It was definitely the most traumatic legal experience of my life, ongoing.
Really?
It was beyond, and I've seen a lot of stuff.
40 years.
40 years. I've seen a lot of stuff.
Wow.
I've had my wife called an effing bee behind me by a opposing counsel. And then my partner going over the rail trying to get at him. And I've had a lot of weird stuff happen over this time. And I'll write a book about all that at some point. But I'll put some of it in defending Maya. But I think the overall trauma, the big trauma was there was no limit. You didn't feel like you could go back and say, "Hey, look, can you just, Judge, can you put some brakes on this? Can we not have our 34th summary judgment on the same issue? Can we kind of slow this down And can you please tell the defense counsel not to object really loudly to every single question in a deposition?
Yeah.
Which they did. I should play some of that for you.
I heard a few of the objections during the trial.
The depositions were war.
Yeah.
There's something, I'll talk about it more, but Mr. Hughes, there's issues there. And,
Yeah.
everybody heard about the thing with Maya's bikini photos. That was particularly
Right.
horrifying.
Right.
There was a lot of stuff in there that matched that. And I hope and pray that the court will allow us to put on the evidence, and I hope everybody watches it, because what I've got to show the audience is just going to be overwhelming. That's what I got to say about that.
Well, there was a lot of hide the football. I know that just from my involvement. There was a lot of, hey, look over there, when, you're asking about over there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be clear. You still do not have everything you need about the immediate jeopardy, correct?
We don't, in my estimation, have even 30%. We may barely have a third of what's out there, because we know the documents, thanks to you in large part, that are supposed to accompany all of this.
Yeah.
And we, when old Howie took the whole file back and didn't let us get a copy, he basically brought it in and said, "Hey, Judge, look, here it is.
Yeah, here it is."
In the middle of trial with everything going on. And at the end of the day, before we could copy it or even look through it, they picked it up and they took it out. I mean, what kind of cheesy BS is that? And I thought they'd get their pleading stricken or something for that kind of hot dog move. And then they filed motion after motion after motion objecting to producing stuff the court had already ordered them to produce.
Yeah.
That's what we were up against.
So in the simple clarity of Martha Ivy, like, where the heck is the IJ?
Man, I don't know. It's somewhere in Howard's office. I'm sure it's in some box or file at Johns Hopkins somewhere, and it's got to be somewhere with the federal government. But my experience with filing the Freedom of Information Act requests has not been a positive one. So about 8 years from now, we might get it from the federal government, particularly with a politically powerful producer.
Sure. I think that, given that everyone on Capitol Hill drives up to Baltimore for their care at Hopkins, makes it a little difficult. Julia Cochran says that the IJ is in Dracula's coffin. That's brilliant. Mathis Grease says it's in the bottom of a moat full of crocodiles.
But there's Howard or Ethan reading it in the coffin. We need a meme, folks. I love the memes. They're fabulous.
Oh my God. Yeah, believe me. I've got a dear friend in the UK who sends me some fantastic memes that I've shared one or two with you along the way. So keep them coming. I know. If you want to hear Greg Anderson laugh, share memes. He loves memes.
Freaking hilarious. I lost it at the John's Dropkins, and the John's Shopkins, where they'd actually done up the logo.
Yeah.
All Prisoners Hospital. And that Dracula one with the judge with an axe. I mean, these things, it was so just brilliant. I loved it. And we made sure, of course, to get those around everywhere. So there's a few of them in our firm.
And one of the audience members did correctly point out that members of Congress also use Walter Reed Army Medical Center and VNIH. But I know for a fact that many skip past the Bethesda Naval Hospital and head up to Baltimore to go to Hopkins. That's where the specialists are. So,
and the outpatient care.
I grew up in that world.
Yeah, the outpatient care. Here's the thing about it. If you looked back on it, the outpatient care for Maya with people like Dr. Kreisman.
Yeah.
I mean, until they got turned to the dark side in litigation, but during the actual care period in 2015, 2016, I thought that they did a pretty good job. They missed some diagnoses, obviously, but they seemed to actually care a little bit. And Kreisman was very honest and forthright about how the ketamine, quote, comas, ketamine infusions in Mexico helped Maya. And so, like everything else in life, it wasn't just everybody was a demon over there. There are good people there. It's just that there's no captain of the ship to knock out the ones that are destroying things.
Yeah.
In my view.
Yeah, that was I will tell you, my kids were 8 and 6 when Hopkins took over All Children's Hospital. All Children's Hospital had been in our community for 100 years.
It was very popular, wasn't it? Or not?
It was popular. It struggled. And the board saw the affiliation or the ownership by Hopkins as a great way to elevate not only the reputation of the hospital, but the performance of the hospital. And as a physician in the community and as a parent in the community, All Children's is in St. Pete. We were in Sarasota at the time. It was about a 45-minute to an hour drive. But to have Hopkins within easy driving distance from my kids, heaven forbid they needed it, made me feel tremendous. And as a physician, the fact that it turned out to be mostly a branding exercise, as evidenced by the statements that you and I both heard as we were sitting next to one another in the deposition of Drs. Napolitano and Dr. Perno. Neither Perno nor Napolitano could point to a single thing that Hopkins Baltimore brought to St. Petersburg that addressed quality or patient safety. Not one.
Can you believe that? I mean, that was some of the most outrageous testimony. And you wonder about them testifying to that and whether the defense knew they were going to say that and what their feelings were. I mean, when I seem to recall when we were deposing him that it was pretty matter of fact. I don't recall it being like a big stressor. They just said, no, they didn't do anything. No involvement.
Yeah.
Big deal. And telling everybody that it's Johns Hopkins, but it's not really.
And I don't know what Courtney B's experience is, but she just dropped in the comments that Johns Hopkins Baltimore Council can also be a chore in my experience, unfortunately. JHACH games sounds very similar to the MO for too many of the Maryland hospitals, unfortunately. So
I'm getting a lot of
they recently added 2 attorneys from Baltimore.
Right.
And tell me the inside baseball. What's behind that? And does the lineup change stop there?
To answer the second question, no. There will be somebody who will appear out of a national firm based in New York City, maybe Chicago, maybe Washington, even possibly Miami, but most likely New York. And they'll have some contact with Johns Hopkins from something else, and they'll get a call and they'll send down their team. And the present folks They're relatively young. I mean, to me, they're in their 40s, I think, maybe late 40s. And their big rap was they got a couple hospitals out of big verdicts. And so that's how they got hired, because they developed this rap that if you're a hospital that sucks and you get hit with a big verdict, we're great appellate lawyers to get it set aside. And to me, I haven't talked to them at all. They're probably perfectly nice people. I'll tell you that they did not follow any of the rules necessary to be pro hoc viced in. They didn't pay the fees.
The unopposed motion
Yeah.
had attorneys.
Telling
Well,
me
you didn't oppose it because they never told you about it,
they
right?
never told me about it. They just filed it and said it's unopposed. We filed something that said, well, yeah, it is. And they all fell all over themselves to say, well, yeah, actually it is opposed. We just never asked them. It was just typical. And our big thing was, okay, you've already got 7 lawyers that are in the courtroom from time to time on this. So you add 2 more, right? 2 more appellate lawyers. And what are they going to do? And could they please just follow the basic rules on how to become a temporary Florida lawyer? You've got to pay the admission fee. You've got to fill out an application to make sure you're not an axe murderer or something, or a vampire. You have to let the bar do a very brief investigation, like a day, just to make sure you don't have 20 malpractice complaints or ethics charges against you in your home state. And then you I can't remember if you need to get sworn in or something, but you have to fill out this application that's the equivalent of that. So there's 3 or 4 things that you have to do to pro hoc in to Florida, and it's the same everywhere. And like I said, I've tried cases in 17 states now, and it's the same everywhere. So when they came in that way, and we had to call them and say, can you please just follow the rule? It's not like we're going to be a-holes and oppose you needlessly, but it would be not. We don't know you from Adam's house cat. So please just follow the rules. And I don't think, actually, to this day, as I sit here right now, I have no confirmation they actually followed all of that. But Judge Carroll didn't seem to mind it much. And so I think they're in. I know I'm not sure, but I think they're in. So welcome to the party, guys. Where they came from was, let me paint the picture. So some senior VP of finance, or some associate general counsel up there in Baltimore finally read through whatever Howard was telling them to figure out that there's a $250 million judgment out there against one of their subsidiaries. And without much commotion or even thought, he or she then called up a few friends that they've known from law school or at the firms they used to work for and said, hey, I got this problem in Florida. We got kind of hit with a verdict. You know, somebody good who can come in and get rid of this thing for us? And then gradually a name came up, and then probably they waited until another person seconded that. And then they reached out and hired him and said, okay, well, here's the story. We didn't do anything wrong. We got hit with this verdict. We got to get out of it. It's ridiculous. There's no facts supporting it. And the judge is a fool. And plaintiffs' lawyers are clowns. And the plaintiffs are taking advantage of us. And so go fix it. That's exactly. It's not verbatim, but that's basically what the conversation was. And they sent these folks down here. In a way, I feel bad for them.
Well,
I don't know what here's the thing. You know, we hired because they hired the former chief judge of the Second District Court of Appeals, which is
Chris Altenberg. Yeah.
Altenburg. I've got the greatest respect for the Second DCA. I have argued before them on 3 prior times. 2 times they agreed with me. One time on a big C-Ray case, they disagreed with me vehemently and affirmed the judgment against my client. But I've always had good results in the sense that they always made sense to me. What they were saying,
Okay.
they didn't come out of left field.
Okay.
And so I had greatest confidence in them, but we were concerned that, as anybody would be, when someone like Howard Hunter hires somebody like Chris Altenburn, well, it's prudent to maybe take some steps just to make sure that Altenburn didn't know somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew something. Not that they would be influenced, not that the court would be influenced on any of the major things, but just that, I don't know. I honestly don't think it was necessary because I trust the court so much, but prudent lawyers will hire appellate counsel who have appeared before that court on multiple occasions. And, we got Ken Bell, Supreme Court Justice, and then Mike, who's the immediate past president of the Florida Bar. And they're brilliant appellate counsel. And what you want are people that have been before the court before. And the point of my story is, why are you bringing down people from Baltimore when what you really need are folks that understand the court and understand the precedent? See, it's interesting with appellate courts, and it took me decades to learn this, and I should have thought of it earlier, but each district court in Florida, and now there's 6. There used to be 5. Now they created a 6th one, which is essentially the Panhandle, I think. They control a number of circuit courts, the trial courts, maybe 5, 6, 8. And within all of those courts, what that appellate court says is law until the Supreme Court disagrees with them.
Right.
So no other, if they've spoken on a topic, no other appellate court really makes much difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally started to pay attention to the fact that the judges constantly said things like, well, this court has previously stated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that finally I figured out that what they were talking about there is that they weren't so concerned about what the other courts were saying or doing. They were concerned about precedent from that court, even if it was 50 years old.
Yeah.
They wanted to know the concept of stare decisis, which is that let's keep a consistent line of law through that. They wanted to know what they had said previously. The point of all this is, I mean, you really need to have lawyers who absolutely know how that court thinks. That's the big thing to me.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think
Greg,
they spent their money the right way there.
You just talked about your appellate team, but you didn't mention Tom Elliott.
Tom,
will you be using other attorneys as well?
Tom's done a fine job on the tasks that he's been given. The way that this occurred is that when we first started talking about appellate attorneys and what we were going to do, and this was before And hang on one second. I'm going to try to look something up for you real quick here. So I've got it. Hold on. So when we started talking about appellate attorneys, generally what you want is somebody that's not only there, but I think I found it. Okay. I just wanted to look up to make sure I knew who got on when. So, sorry.
Talking
Your
about
appellate
Tom.
attorney
Tom's
does
logo.
not. Your appellate attorney does more than just do the appeal.
Got
Your
it.
appellate attorney typically sits in the back of the courtroom and creates the memorandum of law and otherwise helps you craft your legal arguments and the evidence so that you overcome certain obstacles on the appeal.
Okay.
So a lot of what appellate lawyers do is in the courtroom coaching, if you will, the trial counsel to say, hey, look, you've got to get this out of this witness because you've got a big hole here. You see, and so and I had a few people in mind, but we settled on Gunster, which is a fine law firm. But then Gunster then promptly acquired a firm that had Judge Carroll's brother-in-law or brother in it, which immediately presented a potential conflict.
Sure.
Not a huge one, because basically what you do is create a Chinese wall, but Judge Carroll really dots his I's and crosses his T's, as everybody's seen. So we were left in the court, essentially said, well, if anybody from Gunster appears as trial counsel, I'm transferring this case. I'm out of here. And we were so close to trial at that point, back in February, March of 2022, that I didn't want to start this all over again. So the way it worked out was that I was looking for appellate counsel that could actually do the function of being in the courtroom with us, because, and I actually worked it out, and unbelievably, Howard Hunter agreed that our people from Gunster could actually be in the courtroom so long as they didn't make a formal appearance or argue before the court, which I thought, great. I prefer them to be able to argue before the court, but if they can't, well, fine. But as it turned out, we needed counsel that would fill that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And so they suggested Tom, and they actually suggested his partner, Amy Ferrier. And as it turned out, we didn't see them much in the actual courtroom, but Tom did a nice job on a lot of the memoranda that we had, and that's how it ultimately turned out.
And now that you mentioned it, Greg, I remember there was one element in my testimony as you were preparing me, I believe, for the case in chief testimony. You said you actually pointed out something. Now, Tom raised this. We need to make sure that we talk about this in the answer. So I completely understand that answer. And I think he did a great job of keeping us between the guardrails on at least the presentation, the testimony that I had to present.
It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but these are twists and turns of litigation, and you do the best that you can. Get things covered. I would have liked to have had what Howard Hunter and Ethan Shapiro had, which was Chris Altenburn there right behind him, handling most of the legal arguments and being there, to coach up the different points. We didn't have that. Nick and I did it ourselves.
Personally, I will tell you that when I came into the courtroom and when I got there, I didn't know who he was, lawyer Altenburn, but they kept talking about retired judge. And when I looked him up and realized that he was retired from the 2nd DCA, which would hear the appeals, I thought, how is that even
Oh, that
Kosher,
happened.
right? How does
Well,
that kosher?
that's Howard. That's what
Yeah.
Howard does. That's his. That's
Yeah.
what he does. He
Yeah.
goes out and uses political power within the bar
Yeah.
to try to stack the deck against you. And most, let's face, I'm not bragging, but 40 years, especially growing up in the rough and tumble world of insurance defense in the 80s, I've seen every dirty trick in the book, but not a lot of lawyers have.
Yeah.
And so most lawyers have no idea what Howard's doing to them until it's too late.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons Howard has had so many meltdowns is that I've seen the traps he's tried to set for us a mile away. I'm like, Howard, please.
Yeah.
Don't even try it, Howard. I've already got 50 ways around that. Why waste my time? and, and yet, there we go. So that's the big thing, is that he finds the political characters and points to try to win the trial, not based on any facts or law, but based on intimidation and power, basically.
Well,
that doesn't work with me.
I got to witness a couple of those dirty tricks, and
yes, you did.
You know, and it's pretty funny because listen, if you want to make money, Greg, play poker with me. I have no poker face at all, and it's funny because when I went back and watched my testimony after it was all over, when he pulled something shady, like asking me about Dr. Smith's deposition that was never taken. What I meant to ask was, BS, right? I mean, the smile on my face was like, you dirty son of
and you caught him, and he hated that. He hated that. And actually, there, doctor, that was, most witnesses would have fallen for that. And you caught him. And I saw the look on his face because he thought for sure that, and this is such an old trick.
Yeah.
It's just, it's like telling a joke that's 40 years old. He kept trying it to see if it would work, and you knocked it out of the park for me. So
thanks, man.
I never had to worry about it with you.
We're about an hour in. I just want to get to some super chat questions here. Give me a second to divert, but I've got a question that I want to come back to as well. Jackie, thank you for gifting memberships tonight. Kidada Smith, Dr. Goodhair, so happy to see you. Thanks, Kidada. It's getting cut tomorrow, so enjoy it while it's here. Elaine, welcome to Street Fighter. My Louisa, thank you very much for joining us. Carrie Pelton, thank you for joining us. Anna Lee Finch, thank you for your super call out. Lynn, 2574, where have you been? Thank you for gifting 5 memberships tonight. Susie H, ask Greg during trial, he said to Nick, crybaby? Did you call Nick a crybaby?
I don't think I was talking about Nick, was I? You'd have to show me. You have to put it more in context. It's not unusual for me when they pulled a dirty trick I'd seen 10,000 times, and Nick would say, "Do you know what they just did to us?" I go, "Oh, he's such a crybaby!" Like
rub some dirt on it.
the Black Knight out of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That became a constant meme between us. About only a flesh wound. They tear their arm up and they keep coming. It's entirely possible I said that, but without more. I think if it's the instance I'm thinking about, I think we were talking about one of the opposition bitching and moaning about things, which they often did. And my wife,
a lot of that.
Want to know what the hell happened with my nose. I was trying to get my surfboard, which turned into Lisi's surfboard, together and get it out of the way.
And Lisi is your daughter.
Lacey's my 12-year-old, and the leash wrapped around my feet, and I just face planted right into the surfboard. Fortunately, not the part with the kegs on it. Skeggs, rather. Kegs would be okay. Skeggs on it, but I could just hear all of the cartilage crunching, and I thought really I would end up with a smashed nose and couldn't do the show. But fortunately, all I ended up with was a lot of blood, and I
Oh my.
had a little nick here. So
You know, I wasn't going to bring it up because I expected that the answer would be, you should see the other guy.
right, and I did have a whole spiel about that, but I had to come straight because Jen told me to come straight on this.
Mathis Grease says, and he joins us from Germany, by the way. He said, Judge Carroll indicated that $60 million for JHACH is high. Jury seemingly rejected damages formula as a multiple of remaining lifetime and ensured his remaining time as a widower and a father of two would count. Did you consider arguing he be made whole via be defending wrongfully accused and good lawyers cost years and millions?
Yeah, that's a very good insight. And who is it from Germany?
Mathis.
Mathis. That is a very good call. And if you go back and you watch the 2 minutes and 38 seconds that the judge gave me to argue during the motion for new trial, you'll see, which is a whole nother topic, how much he actually lets me argue. But you'll see that one of the things that I said was one of the reasons, Judge, behind that verdict, that amount being what it was look at the age of the jurors. They were all pretty much at least in their 40s, but most of them were in their high 50s, 60s, a couple, maybe one in their 70s.
Yeah.
These are people who had lived and knew what it was going to be like for Jack as he got older, without a wife. Who wants to try dating when you're 65? You know, who wants to? And he had everything, and he had that taken from him, and he's got to turn his kids loose sooner or later to live their lives.
Yeah.
So what does the man have? You know, if he's going to be a good dad, he's going to always be there for him, and Jack always will be. But Beata was kind of a one of a kind. Not kind of. Beata was a one in a million wives on multiple bases, and you know, he lost her, and I felt better when Judge Carroll, cutting me off as he always does, said, well, I was in the trial too, Mr. Anderson. So that told me, everything you're telling me I've considered, which he loves to tell me anyway, and that's what he does most of the time when I'm arguing before him.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I think every dime of that will be or is earned in the sense of loss. It's hard to express those things. It's really impossible to express those things, but it takes nothing against our younger listeners. But you have to get to the point in your life where you realize that you have less of your life ahead of you and more of it behind you. And you have to think through what folks in that situation face without a spouse to help raise these kids in some difficult circumstances, and then to spend the rest of your life probably without somebody or a series of dating episodes or whatever is in Jack's future, which he's a great guy. And I think hopefully he'll find somebody, but it's never going to be Beata.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the court understands. And I think the court does. And I can only hope that the court puts in his order a little bit about what I was talking about and what Mathis is talking about, and what the court said. Yeah, I was in the courtroom. I heard it too, because it's very powerful testimony from a lot of different people about where Jack was. And you know what really got me, and I think is so big, judging the general damages here
Mm-hmm.
was the testimony of Tim, our pediatric psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
who talked about how PTSD, they have now learned, actually forms lesions in your brain. There's
Yeah.
actually a physiological reaction to that level of stress
Yeah.
that just doesn't go away. And when I understood that, it made it a lot clearer to me what Jack faced. And let me tell you something else. If anybody's ever on a jury, so, I've been practicing long enough now so that I've had the opportunity to privilege to represent people when they were kids. One of my next door neighbors' daughters, when she was 2.5, got run over by a driver going the wrong way
Oh my God.
road on Balboa Island in California, and ran over her head and part of her body. She lived, she survived,
Oh my God.
you know, with a lot of skin grafts and a lot of work and 20 surgeries.
Wow.
And but being young, she, she came back, and then by the time she was in her I don't know, 10, 11, 12, she looked okay. And as time has gone on, I've seen the effects of these kind of injuries, and more the psychological effect. And she's just a little kid when this happened. And I can say for certain that in virtually every case that I've handled where I've followed a child or a younger person, no matter what I argued for of how horrible it would be down the road, it's always been worse.
It's
It's
always been worse.
always been
Wow.
worse.
Wow.
It's a horrific thing to admit to oneself that you cannot get to the point of arguing enough to get down to what Dr. Richards would say, 2 standard deviations below what you expect. But yeah, it's when terrible things happen to people like this, it's you have to walk a mile in their shoes to really understand
Yeah.
it. Number one. Number two, you really need to have life experience comparable to that person.
Yeah.
And you have to keep in mind that as you get older, life takes more and more chunks out of you. No way around that.
Yeah.
And you're,
Yeah. Having
yeah. That's why,
having dealt with sciatica over the Christmas break, the flu
oh God,
since the first of the year, and now started antibiotics yesterday for pneumonia.
you're having a blast.
Yeah, I'm feeling some chunks taken out of me right now, my friend.
Oh
Hey,
yeah. And that's
Greg, I
why,
want to.
yeah, that's why it's hard sometimes to argue with jurors in their 20s and 30s, and nothing against those folks.
Yeah.
I mean, they can be very generous and very, very understanding. And I'm not negative towards them, but I don't know that it's the same feel
Yeah.
as you get when you're older after those losses of parents and
For sure.
kid issues and a divorce and job problems and all that. I mean, you finally get life bearing down on you. And I think that's what happened with this jury. I really do believe that they comprehended exactly where
Yeah.
Jack was and was going to be.
Yeah. Well, a couple of really smart comments in the chat based on what you just said. Number one, Greeners, who is absolutely on fire tonight, says the surfboard company must be sweating bullets right now.
I think that was total Greg idiocy.
There's a couple of dozen folks in the audience who will tell you that dating at any age is just not what it used to be, and they're not terribly. They empathize with Jack, but I will also tell you that Mathis is far from the only audience member of advocates who thinks that the jury number should be changed 1 penny. And in fact, there's been a lot of conversation in previous episodes that the jury got it right and may have been overly conservative. They had an opportunity to 3x the 220 million in the punitive side, and the 50 million seemed rather polite. So
Absolutely.
I want to get to a couple of other questions. AKA the Cat Lady, thank you very much for gifting memberships. Delia Sander, integrity is everything. Thank you both for your heroism. Thank you. 10 mile per hour winds in VA tonight. I'm from Inglewood. Later, coming to eat, Joe. Cat's Pajamas, welcome to the membership. JPC, Dr. Joe and Greg, did you see the video Recovery Addict created to prove that it was Kathy Beatty's hand pulling Maya's shirt down? I didn't see that.
Saw some of that. That was brilliant, whoever did it. Yeah, well, they were showing, if I'm not mistaken, the position of the thumbs and also the skin texture and coloration. And
I'll have to get that from Scott and send it around.
Very smart. I think the jury got it, but I'm not sure the jury cared that much. I think they were like, are you freaking kidding me? You don't do that to somebody's kid.
Yeah.
The overwhelming reaction. Viscerally, I understood from the jury. I mean, are you freaking out of your mind? Little girl without her parents around and putting her through that just so you can try to protect your own ass?
Yeah. And then to suggest that it wasn't Kathy Beatty's voice on the phone, that's a whole nother topic. We'll get to it a little bit. Ruby wants to know, would Greg consider publishing the depositions on YouTube? I would eat it up with a spoon.
Let me speak on that. So I get this request a lot, and I think it's incredibly important that the public, particularly the viewers here, the folks out here, get to see the whole story. And yeah, it's on the docket. You can see the motion practice and some of the responses to discovery, not too much of it, but reading the depositions will really give you a glimpse into what exactly went on. Now, having said that, as some folks may know or not know, there is a book coming out called Take Care of Maya, amazingly enough. And it's being written as we speak. And I'm going to talk to him day after tomorrow again. My friend James D. Felice, who wrote American Sniper.
Sure.
And I think the screenplay for that, and 3 other books that are on the New York Times bestseller list. And that's a whole story about finding Jim, but he's a fantastic writer, as anybody.
Yeah, amazing writer.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm available for dinner when you meet with him, by the way.
Well, he's a blast. He's very funny and interesting, as you would expect. But we looked at John Krakauer, who wrote Into Thin Air, and we looked at Sebastian Junger, who wrote The Perfect Storm. We were looking at that kind of real life writer, and Jim. I clicked with him more than anybody, and then Maya clicked with him. So that anyway.
Well, and if I may, just to affirm that I think you made a right call. He did such an incredible job, not just talking about the mechanism of Kyle's sniper skills, but tapping into his family life, his personality, the way that he was raised. I mean, I still use one of the lines that was out of the screenplay where he was having supper with his dad as a teenage boy. And his dad says, there's 3 kinds of people in this world.
Right.
There's wolves, there's sheeps, and there's sheepdog. And you, son, are a sheepdog.
That's right.
That was brilliant.
Oh, I tell myself.
Great choice.
Yeah.
Did you ask Hunter S. Thompson?
I love Hunter S. Thompson. Too bad he's gone now. I was I love Fear and Loathing.
I could just imagine Fear and Loathing in Venice, Florida.
Fear and Loathing in Venice, Florida. Somebody needs to write that. Maybe let's tie that back into the depositions now. because there really needs to be about 15 books written about this. Uh,
Oh
so
my God.
we've got Take Care of Maya, which I'm hopeful will be out. I doubt Jim will get it done by the summer, maybe by the fall. And then something that not a lot of people know, actually nobody knows, but I kept a voice recorder next to the bed through the entire trial, from the first day we started voir dire all the way through the end. And before I went to bed, I would put down my thoughts of what happened that day and what I thought was significant and how I felt. And I've got all those. And the amazing Gabby, who everybody knew from the trial, one of my legal assistants there, is busy not only getting them transcribed, courtesy of Dragon Legal, but also putting them in some order. Now, ethically, an attorney cannot do anything that interferes with the client's literary rights. And I never would in a million years. I can, and what I've done is facilitate Maya, Jack, and Kyle's story getting out through Jim. Once Jim, though, gets it together and he and Maya publish the story, then I'm free to talk not about Maya's story, but about our story of what happened in trial.
Yeah.
And the working title for mine is Defending Maya, because that's what it ended up being in a lot of ways. And so I'm hopeful that that'll come out within a few months after I Take Care of Maya. In conjunction with that, our plan is to post every single deposition, every single transcript from court hearings.
Oh my goodness.
Every piece of paper we can without violating attorney-client privilege. Everything we can, so that those folks that are interested in this fascinating story can dig as deep into it as they want.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to try to get that done before the end of the year.
Julian Assange is online too. Wow. Hey, speaking of books, I've had multiple questions. What about Iron 44?
Iron 44 I have a bunch of copies of Iron 44, and if your listeners, sweet as they are, if they send in their addresses, I will, simply for postage, I'll send them the very limited, unabridged versions of Iron 44. So the story with Iron 44 was that after the trial, which concluded in 2013, I wasn't allowed to write until we concluded all the collateral stuff. And we had a whole bunch of other cases going on. And it only concluded really in 2015, 2016. So I wrote it, and then it sat and sat and sat. And then I got one of the experts, amazingly enough, from that, Rick Lavers, who had one very good book, unpublished though. And he helped me write Iron 44. And Iron 44 is as big as the textbook you hated the most in college. I am not kidding you. Let me see. Do I have an Iron 44 around here? I could show folks where the hell are all my Iron 44s? I probably have 25 or so hard copies and the same amount of soft bounds. But here's the end of the story for those folks that don't get the right now. To get something published, it really can't be 900 pages of a big book. It has to be 300 or below, or Simon and Schuster. Nobody's going to pick it up. And so part of this whole deal with Jim is I've got Jim helping me a little bit, and I've cut down 2/3 of it. I have one more third that I hope to get cut down in the next month. It was set up by, in terms of the first section was the accident, which was a horrific helicopter crash that killed 11, all these wonderful young smoke jumpers and firefighters.
Yep.
Incredible story there. And then the second was the NTSB. Part 2 is NTSB investigation, where the NTSB came out with an initial report within 3 or 4 days of visiting the site that said that it was a power loss, which is what we were contending, that the General Electric engine lost power.
Yeah.
And then they promptly put the guilty engines in the repair facility of a GE related company. And amazingly enough, the key parts disappeared in the one room in the entire facility that did not have video. And after that, the NTSB, instead of fessing up, changed the entire story.
Oh my goodness.
Now blame the pilots. So all the engineers, and I was representing the flight crew, which nobody wants to represent in aviation. That's a whole nother story. The pilots are always blamed. I was representing the flight crew, Bill Coltis and the pilot Rourke Schwanenberg, through his wife. He burned to death in the crash. But part 2 is about that investigation and just how crazy things get when you've got corporate and government agencies working hand in hand in something. And, all the engineers left and all the lawyers came in to go through the paperwork to blame it on the pilots. All that I've got condensed down pretty well. Part 3, though, is the trial. And the trial, which produced a $71 million verdict, is another one that lasted 7 weeks. And I don't want to give the story away, but suffice it to say that you need 12 unanimous jurors there. And one of our jurors went missing for almost a week. And we had to send out the sheriff detectives to locate him and bring him in a squad car to the court so the court could convince him to continue the trial, or it would all have gone away. So there's a lot of twists and turns in Iron 44. It's a fascinating story. I seem to always get caught up in these kind of thinking cases. I don't know. But
well,
if
to the audience,
yeah, I'll send as many out of
the community. I will set up something in the community.
Yeah, if you can
I'm
find
sorry,
a way.
I had a little bit of a glitch there, Greg. I will find a way to. I will find a way to build a list of audience members who would like to read it, and I'll work with you on getting them books. Okay, so look for that in the community chat tomorrow, and I'll work with Greg.
All right, so we really need, though. I love everybody who's supporting us, and I want everybody who wants to read Iron 44. It's a fascinating story. It's just really long, but
yeah.
And I promise I'll get the abridged version out soon, but it would be great if certain groups of folks got together and agreed that after one reads it, another one reads it, another one reads it, and it comes back to whoever ultimately got the book to begin with, so that everybody got a chance to read it before I get
We'll figure out. It'll be like distribution of the communion host. We'll figure out how to make it work, right? The loaves and fishes. Horse Welfare was asking, why can't the IJ be subpoenaed directly from the Joint Commission? And we kind of already talked about that it can be, but it can take forever.
I had this brilliant expert witness who used to work for Hospital Corporation of America and was a doctor and knew all this stuff, who pointed that out during the course of the trial. And like I said, the problem is that it takes a long time to get this stuff from any government agency. It really does. It's by the time we would get it, it would likely be either it may be the appeal is over, but we're looking for, it actually should happen is that the court, who has shown very little enthusiasm now for following up with this, the court should just order them to produce it.
Yeah.
And
they did order that. Remember, anything with a scintilla of odor was supposed to be turned over in 24 hours, but let's not get down that rabbit hole.
Right.
LA gifted 5 memberships. Thank you very much. One with no name. Thank you for your participation tonight. Lynn, again, I had shoulder surgery a couple of weeks ago. Glad to be back. That's where you've been. Well, thank you for turning up tonight, Lynn. We hope that your recovery is going well. And I also want to point out to you, Greg, that Jules, the notorious agent Jules,
our secret agent,
your secret agent Jules, she has been dealing with some horrendous TMJ.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jules.
And as kind of a last ditch effort, she actually went and had Botox injected into her jaw.
I've heard of that.
And it worked.
Oh, that's
fantastic.
It
worked. So I'm happy to share that Jules is feeling better these days.
You can go back to your Mata Hari role for.
And Nancy, I just want to say, Nancy, thank you for your super chat. Dr. Joe and Attorney Anderson, thank you for all your time. You have both opened my eyes. Well, thank you for being a part of this group of advocates, Nancy. And Peggy Cole, will you seek sanctions for Juror 1? Let's pivot to Juror 1. Peggy, I think we've already talked about the meanness of the allegations made against Juror 1 and his wife and Jules, and Deborah Salisbury, for that matter. So sanctions, again, we've discussed that, and hopefully they're coming. But Greg, let's talk about Juror 1. First of all, I shared with the advocates before you got on that I was tempted to wear my tribute shirt.
I saw
for
that.
Juror 1 tonight.
I loved it.
You're talking about a law enforcement officer. And yeah, there's always going to be a bad cop here and there. But the overwhelming majority of law enforcement officers are committed to doing the right thing.
Yeah, my dad.
And to have his I'm sorry, Greg?
My dad was a career FBI agent, so I get it.
I did not know that. Yeah. That gives me some insight into you. Mm-hmm. To have his integrity smeared the way that it was, in motion after motion after motion, I couldn't be more proud of the job that he did in a situation that there's no way any juror would ever be prepared to be questioned in open court about whether or not he followed the rules. I think he did a remarkable job. And, I really respect what he and his wife have been through. I respect the way that Deborah Salisbury kind of gave the defense the back of the hand for besmirching her integrity, a lawyer, an officer of the court for 30 plus years. It's incredible what they've done to good people.
Yeah.
Because they got their butts whipped.
Let me tell you a little bit about what I think was going on with the whole interview thing. First, consider that this verdict form was unlike any I have ever seen. And I argued against it because I felt it was too confusing for the jury. But the jury figured it out. Paul, leading them, the juror number one, figured it out. And what Judge Carroll was doing was isolating every single incident and asking the jury, did it happen? And did it constitute battery or false imprisonment or whatever? And how much to award? So there's all these little mini awards for each one of the things that happened, right? And what he was doing there, the reason this is important is he was and is trying to make this case as unretriable as possible. Meaning that if the appellate court disagreed with him on a particular number and reduced it or said, no, that part's immune or something like that, all you had to do was cut out that amount of money.
Yeah.
And it came back and you still had your judgment and the case was over. Now that's freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
And I had not thought through this. Now, why that's important in this context is that if you read the court's order about interviewing jurors, he correctly cites all the law about how difficult, almost impossible the hurdle is to allow the interview of a juror because of the threat of getting into the what we call intrinsic parts of the jury, which is, well, why did you award that amount of money and why did you decide that they did this? All the why questions are absolutely verboten for our German person. And so by the end of the order, you thought he was saying, well, defense, screw you. We're never going to interview this guy because you've got no basis and all your stuff's idiotic, by the way, which he did everything but say. But then at the end, he says, still, given all that, I'm going to allow the interview to go forward based on the uniqueness of this situation and the publicity, which is a big tell to the appellate court that, hey, judges of the appellate court, I don't really think that an interview was necessary, but given this whole Netflix thing and what's riding on this, I wanted to make sure that you three appellate folks knew the answers to these questions so it wouldn't come back to say, do this. I wanted to cover every single point that could possibly be brought up on appeal. Because don't forget that Judge Carroll's a very bright guy. He clerked at the Florida Supreme Court, a very good clerk, and he's well known to the Second DCA. And I happen to know that he's well known to our governor. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he wanted to end up on the Second DCA. Yeah. Now, a good way to end up on the Second DCA is not to get reversed a lot.
Right.
So
but he doesn't get reversed a lot.
93% of the time he's affirmed.
Yeah.
93% of the time.
Right.
So if you add all that up, what it means is the judge never bought their BS. And he didn't do it just for him wanting to get on the bench. But I think he did it as a matter of pride that he doesn't want this case reversed in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So that's how come that whole thing came down. And I think he had confidence in Paul.
Yeah.
Because he said at the hearing, I sat 5 yards away from this man, and I never saw the first thing to indicate that he was biased or in any way one-sided.
Yeah.
You know? And it was true. Paul asked tough questions. I didn't think that Paul was particularly on our side.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
why the whole thing with alternate number one. Now it turns out one thing I am pleased about is that I finally had drinks and dinner with Paul and his wonderful wife Yolanda last week, and I had specifically made a point of not talking to him, contacting him, emailing him, texting him, smoke signals, or anything else. I never wanted to be accused of having any contact with
yeah.
Paul,
Yeah.
any of the jurors. It was not happening. But finally, after the ruling, I thought it was okay, and we went out and we just had a cocktail hour, and a couple drinks, and I got a chance to talk to the man and get to know him a little bit. And first off, he's a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he really is, and has a heart of gold. And from the bottom of my heart, not only do I thank him, but I believe that his heart was in this, and not just for us, but more for the
Yeah.
system. I really believe that I know he was very motivated about his civic duty.
Yeah.
That came from law enforcement or what, but he was incredibly motivated to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So I was, because, there was a big thing about when we were trying to decide between, they moved to strike Paul, so I could have lost Paul, but then I got alternate number one.
Yeah.
And alternate number one, I read as being 100% in our camp. So I'm like, not sure about Paul, but I like our alternate a whole lot. I mean, all of his signals to me, they indicate, yeah, he's going to be for us. So then, if you recall, at the end, after I went back and forth about 5 times, I finally thought, well, what about my client,
Yeah.
who is the actual person in charge of this whole dog and pony show? And Jack directed me to keep Paul.
Yeah.
And then we know the result. It was a wonderful
Yeah.
verdict. So I kept thinking, oh my God, I might have blown this whole case.
Some
people said that alternate number one was not on our side.
Really?
We had that from 2 or 3 other people. Yeah. And I was, my heart, just, oh my God, I could just that one decision. Thank you, Lord. And thank you, Jack, for making that right decision for me. But Paul, when we met, finally said, oh no, he was 100% for you, Greg. You had him read right. He wanted to give even more money than we ultimately gave.
Wow.
So I felt better that I might not have completely blown the case, but I'm still very happy that Paul ended up our foreperson, because I knew at least one of the female jurors on the back row may not be with us.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think that Judge Carroll's denial that he issued the afternoon prior to the Juror 1 interview was such a back of the hand to the defense's nonsense. And in 14 pages, Judge Carroll went argument by argument by argument about how ludicrous their, obvious statement of fact was. Nothing, not even good conjecture. And I think one of the most brilliant things that Judge Carroll built into that denial was to point out a misstatement that you just made. You said that Juror 1 was for us. And I will tell you, having spoken to Juror 1 since the interview and reading Judge Carroll's denial, I think that he was making he was 60 40 40 60 based on what he was hearing. He asked very challenging questions to your witnesses and to the defense witnesses. He wasn't picking sides. He was trying to parse through some incredibly challenging information. I mean, let's face it. I'm a physician and I kind of understand it. But, if you're not in medicine, the conversations that we were having are very arcane and very difficult to understand. And I think he did a law enforcement officer's job of figuring it out. Just the facts, man. So I really respect the hell out of him. And I think, and again, I just absolutely love the back of the hand that Judge Carroll crafted in 14 pages, including a reference to the tuft of justice.
Tuft of power, as I call it. The legendary
Holy crap.
Power.
Holy crap. When he talked about the island of hair.
And his son says, just because there's hair up there doesn't mean there's hair up there, Dad. You have no hair.
I can hear.
I loved it. And let me tell you something very important about all this. A judge cannot sit as a seventh juror.
Right.
They cannot substitute their own opinion for the jury, right? And because of everything that's come out, and now we've studied Paul's 209 questions, we know that he had no particular bias for or against anyone. And that verdict that came out there, and that there was a lot of discussion back and forth among those jurors about each and every one of these and how much should we give them. They went through this and they went through this and went through this. It may have saved us from some remitter, which means the judge may cut down part of the verdict here and there, because I think it's very hard for Judge Carroll and even harder for the appellate court to hear this man come in and testify to how that the process worked exactly the way the founding fathers intended it, and the way the Florida Rules of Civil Procedure and Evidence intended it, and most important, exactly the way that Judge Carroll instructed them. And so knowing that, it's extremely difficult for a judge to come in and say, yeah, I know the system worked absolutely perfectly, and these jurors were all over it, and they asked questions, a million questions of everything and everyone, and on and say, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I think this is too much money here, and this is too much money, and this is too much money here. Why? Because they're putting themselves in as a seventh juror, which are absolutely not allowed to do. And so we'll see how Judge Carroll handles it. I mean, we'll know on the 22nd, but Paul, by his honesty, forthrightness, and just dignity as a citizen, he may have saved us in a lot of instances.
For sure. Completely agree. Completely agree. Hey, listen, Greg, I know that I've kept you 2 hours already, and I don't know how much longer I can keep you. So I just want to
go to bed with the kids.
I will start to point toward the airport. I won't promise you I landed anytime soon, but we'll at least aim for the airport. But let me just ask you a couple of other questions if I can.
As long as the jury out there is not bored, then I'm fine. Your listeners are my jury.
They're amazing, aren't they?
They are.
So Heather wants to know if Juror 1 can request attorney's fees from the defense.
Yes. And we prepared and filed a motion for just that.
Okay.
And then when Bob Turf came in, and if you listen to the transcript, I point that out. And then I point out that really Bob, representing Paul, has what we call better standing than we do. Because the fees are going against Paul, not against us.
Right.
So Paul's attorney should really be the one arguing for him. So we filed the motion. We sort of turned it over to Bob, and Bob is looking at it, but I can't tell everybody yet what may happen. I can tell you, this is just me, that under the law, if he seeks and is awarded sanctions here in this court for certain conduct, then he cannot sue Johns Hopkins in a separate case for abuse of process and defamation of character.
Yeah.
So that's all I'll say about that. And I'll let all of you commentators and folks watching this to figure out. That's just Greg on the law and theorizing, but now you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, profound respect for Paul and Yoli. They have been through a lot. I'm very curious. I would be very interested in speaking with and bringing Deb Salisbury to this group. I would love to get her perspective on them besmirching her reputation as an officer of the court as well.
The story she has to tell from the underlying shelter hearings are not to be believed. I mean, in the sense that you should not have. She can absolutely be believed, but what they did there is, again, beyond.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can do something.
So, Ashley King, thank you for your question. What are some of your personal favorite highlights from your team? What surprised you? What do you appreciate? Do you have any proud moments? And I would add, what didn't get brought in that you wanted to bring in?
Answering your question first, I hope everybody knows that Kathy Beatty had been previously arrested for child abuse and nearly suffocating a 10-year-old boy while she was working for Suncoast, who was a former defendant in the case, and back in 2007, and she was hired in 2012. And so there's a 5-year difference between her getting arrested, and it was null prost, meaning they didn't ultimately convict her, but it was in the paper, and Beatty admitted to it, and it was actually in her employment record. And the kid almost died from Beatty tackling him and putting a blanket over his head, and he kept screaming, I can't breathe, and she wouldn't let him up. Sound familiar? And I had all that testimony ready to go, people involved. I had it all set up. I thought the jury would just go berserk if they heard that after what she did to Maya, and then Johns Hopkins keeping her around, and the court excluded it.
Yeah.
That was upsetting. I had a lot more to talk about in terms of the neonatal cardiology malpractices that brought out the imminent jeopardy of losing your federal funding that I could have brought out. Let me just say, I left about a third of my evidence in my briefcase, as we say. In other words, I could have put on another 2 weeks of hard-hitting evidence that got excluded or just time would not allow, that I thought would just enrage a jury. And so that's the answer to that question. So in terms of what are the high points, the high point was getting the verdict.
So Greg,
was winning. That was a big high point for me.
So Greg, let me ask you about that. When we were watching, I was not in the courtroom when the verdict came down. I was like,
pissed, by the way, I know you know that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was a little pissed at the time, but
well, I'm sorry, I couldn't be there.
Not for you not being there, but circumstances.
But I will tell you that, like millions around the world who watched the verdict, the camera was really intently focused on Maya and Kyle, and watching them just melt into each other's arms, sobbing. And, Rob on Law and Lumber really summed it up beautifully. He does family law. He sees this all the time. He said it wasn't joy, it wasn't anger, he said it was every emotion coming to the forefront, right? And I thought that was beautifully put. My question, Greg, is when you heard the verdict after 5+ years of uphill slogging, what did you feel? What emotions did you experience in the moment?
I know that this is going to be anticlimactic to everybody, but I knew almost to a certainty, based on my read of the jury, that we were going to win. I thought we'd bust 50, maybe 75 million. And the first couple were read when, generally speaking, a jury is either with you or against you in something like this. If the answer to the first question had been no battery, then I would have braced myself, and it wasn't the end of the world because they could have brought it back in other places, but it would have been a very compromised verdict, and I would have been disappointed, I'm sure. When they read off the, whatever it was, 3.5 million for the first incident of battery, I still was a little, okay, it's pretty good, but that was only one incident. It wasn't until about, I don't know, 8 or 9 questions in, and I forget what the question was. I think it was something about Maya and for the intentional infliction of emotional distress, and I think they gave her like 25 million. That's when I started breathing, and that's when oh, thank God, because then I knew it was going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Then I knew if they're giving her that much for that, the chances are it's going to be a big one. But I never predicted how big it was going to be. I thought there was a possibility of busting a million. But like I said, I really, with all my experience and knowledge, I was thinking 50 to 75. I was hoping I'd beat the 71 million I'd gotten in Portland. But in terms of the overall effect, it's interesting. You put everything in your life into something. But at this stage of my career, I think what I felt most was satisfaction and vindication. I know that people expect me to be like Nick and everybody else, full of emotion, but as in what I do and my responsibilities, I can never afford to lose it in the courtroom. I can't afford to lose the how do I say this right? I can't afford a lot of emotion, and I can't get off track. And so I said I was a little pissed. There are all these photographs of Maya clutching Nick. One made it around the world, I think.
Yeah.
And Maya with one of my experts and good friend, Scott Richards, and Maya with Gabby, and and there's none of them with me there.
Yeah.
And there's really none of them with me with any of the clients there at that time. And you know why?
Why is that?
Because I went up immediately to the end of the juror box where they were filing out to say, and just look at them and say, thank you to each one of them, but also to make sure that nothing hinky went on that could ultimately be accused of any problems or issues or high-fiving among the jurors or anything that the defense could later come in and swear to that was bad. I needed to be right there and see those folks file out.
Yeah.
And then I walked by Judge Carroll and I nodded to him and he said, I can't talk to you, which is right. And I said, I know, Judge, but good job. Just like that. And he just looked at me for a second and kind of shook his head and went back to whatever he's doing. And I went over and I thanked both of the clerks, the judicial clerks, who did a hell of a job. And I went over and thanked our bailiffs, particularly Nick. And then I circled around and I would have said something or done something with the defense counsel, but they were they
You were out in the hallway dropping F-bombs in front of your staff.
They were busy with the F-bombs in the hallway. And so everybody
You're talking about bus bench people.
Yeah. Everybody had started to move out that way, and I never got a chance to hug Maya or to do any of that at the time. And everybody else and everybody got the big photo op and everything that circled around, and I didn't. But if you're going to be a pro, you got to be a pro all the time.
Yeah.
And those are the situations where everybody's emotional and there's a lot going on in the courtroom where one little thing can screw it up for your client. And so I did what I always do, which is I forgot about the emotion. I forgot about the high-fiving. And I went over to make sure there was nothing weird going on with the jury and the defense counsel or anything else. And I went by, even though I couldn't talk to him, and nodded to the trial judge. And I said, thank you to the clerks. I said, thank you to the bailiffs. I did what you're supposed to do if you're a pro.
Yep.
And there's not many pros left out there. I'm sorry to say.
It's funny, Greg, because when I was an obstetrician gynecologist in an earlier life, I can very much relate to what you're talking about. Your job was to remain focused on the job while everybody else is worried about the epidural's not working, the baby's screaming, the baby's not crying, what have you. And it's funny because when the gregarious Greek goddess and I got married, as we were coming up to the wedding, she said, my emotional pendulum is here. I married a Greek woman. Hers is here, right? and so she told me before the wedding, I want to make you say, wow. She says, you're never angry. You're never elated. The only time I see you super crazy is at a Florida Gator football game. And she goes, you're so into watching the Gators play football. And this was during the Spurrier years, right? She said, I could catch fire sitting next to you and you wouldn't notice until after the game was over.
Or maybe just dump a drink on here and go.
Yeah. So when she showed up at the back of the church, I actually held up a sign that said, wow.
Oh.
And it broke the ice. The whole church, we had 500 plus guests. The whole church cracked up. Any nervousness, any tension was just completely gone.
Perfect, Doc.
But she said, what would you have done if I'd showed up in just a hideous gown and looked terrible? I said, I would have taken the wow sign and flipped it over and said, Mom.
Oh, she'd love that.
Yeah. But, you're right. You've got to, you've got to stay focused and you've got to do the job. Right. And, I had plenty of like tension headaches after a stressful day, but not during. So I appreciate your story of staying in the role, right? My daughter has a saying, and I'm blanking on it now. It's a commit to the bit. She says, commit to the bit, right? Stay engaged.
Yeah, you got to stay in character through the whole thing. And that's something that I'm probably going to try to help with as time goes on. I've been invited to speak to International Association of Barristers and to AAJ, American Association for Justice, and I don't know, 4 or 5 other organizations now about it. Everybody's fascinated, the legal world, about the trial. And, I'm going to try to make the point that trial lawyering as opposed to being a litigator, which is what the defense was.
Right.
There are
Right.
litigators and there are trial attorneys. A trial attorney can be a litigator, but a litigator unnecessarily and probably isn't a trial attorney.
Right.
And the role of trial attorney, particularly for the defense, which is 90% of our work, our cases are defense. I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but I'm out there representing Chris Kraft and insurance companies and all kinds of manufacturers and stuff. And I think that that's necessary to hone your skills. The idea with a lawyer is you should stay detached as much as you can in terms of your obligations as an officer of the court and to uphold the sense of justice. And one of the things I keep saying is that I'm not seeing enough young lawyers learning how to do it.
Yeah.
And how to do it right.
Yep.
And you gotta carry the briefcase and you gotta spend a lot of time learning by osmosis. Nick only had 3 trials
Yeah.
before that.
And he did not do well in his first.
Oh my God. What a story that is. Oh, it's too embarrassing. I'll let him tell that one.
Yeah. He did. He shared it. He was honest. Hey, I do want to pass along a message from Jules. She says, every strong man always has a strong woman there to hold him up. And Greg Anderson has Jennifer Anderson that holds him every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And Jules, couldn't agree with you more. And I have been through a lot, and Patty's the one who's been there for me. And as they get older, so have my kids. So. Hey, Greg, I know that Lizzie and Gray need you. So I don't want to keep you from, I know that you've got a nighttime ritual that very much like when my kids were little, around winding down prayers and bedtime. So I don't want to keep you from that. But Greg, I just got a text message. Actually, I got the text message probably half an hour ago from my wife that said, you guys could talk for all night.
That is true. And we have before.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. I do want to share two more comments. One from Emmy said it was genius of you to call Maya's former attorney as a witness by Zoom. He was the one who brought me firmly to Maya's side. And Tara Rayner says, do you agree with me that Judge Carroll looks like the Gerber baby, all grown up? I love it. I love it. Hey, before I let you go,
that one. I can't wait to see the meme on that one.
So let me ask you. Someone had asked in the chats earlier about if there was a GoFundMe page for the Kowalskis to pay legal fees, but that's covered. What I would ask you to do is don't give away any family secrets or write any, make any promises that you can't cash. But you have shared with me what the Kowalski family intends to do with the substantial sum of money that they will get as a result of the trial. And I think that it is so in character for this tremendous American family, this American success story that has been destroyed with the loss of Beata. Can you just give us a glimpse of what they've got in mind and how they're going to use this win to help others?
The first thing I'll say is I have never seen a less money grubbing or money concerned client in my career. They wanted to prove that Beata did what she did for a very, very good reason, to protect her daughter, like a mom running out in front of a truck to throw the child aside. They wanted for Maya to be vindicated. She was telling the truth. She does have CRPS. But at the same time, they understood and they wanted to be compensated for what they'd been through because their lives were destroyed. And the jury did that. But I got to say that even before we even knew we were going to get a verdict, and we were just talking, Jack and I can't reveal a lot about attorney-client privilege things, but I can tell you generally that the subject came up of, well, Jack, if we are really successful in this, how can I help? What do you want to do? And the first thing out of his mouth was, Greg, I want you to design a way for us to help other families in the same situation. I want to be able to use the money to help people that found themselves where we were, without support and without any ability to fight back. And so we've talked about it a little bit more, and I think their goals are twofold. I think first, they want to help victims of medical kidnapping and this level of horrific attention to perfectly good families by hospitals and DCF in combination. I know that's priority one. I think priority two is that, especially from Maya, they want to ensure that there's ongoing research on the diagnosis, but even more the treatment of CRPS. They want to fund and give grants to researchers who are trying to figure out how this disease comes about, figure out that pathway between the brain and the nerve endings, understand why that feedback loop, instead of decreasing, increases. So that, and through that, and it is a bit, they want, if there's a cure or something that can be done for Maya, they want that. And so that's wise in their point of view. And so I was actually just on the phone today with a bunch of lawyers about it. I don't know how to get in these roles, but I think they wanted to establish a foundation, and they want to use a considerable amount of the money towards that with a nonprofit that will, if I have anything to do with it, protect the amount of money that they receive, whatever that might be, still fund a foundation. And I know Jack certainly wants to spend the rest of his life as much as he can helping, even to the point of just being there for them, but also financially, people who have been attacked as he was and Maya was, and helping him through that. And I don't know if many people know this or not, but at the time that Maya first was diagnosed and it first got going, Jack's plan, and he had already applied to join, what is it? It's getting late, my mind. They were all over the hurricanes and everything, the federal FEMA. He wanted to go with FEMA, and he'd already put applications in, and he didn't really care if he got paid. He just wanted to help people. Jack went to, I hope this came out in my direct examination, but Jack went to 9/11 after 9/11 and helped in the cleanup. A bunch of firefighters from Chicago did. A bunch of firefighters from Chicago area, including Jack, went down for Katrina and helped with the cleanup. And they got paid some, but it was all volunteer.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go down there to do it. So Jack's made a life of helping people. If there were ever a family that, if you are going to award a large amount of money, should receive it, it's the Kowalskis, because they really have exactly in mind what most people would hope someone who ultimately prevails in one of these things receives. I mean, this is not to buy a Rolls Royce and just hang out partying family at all. This is a family that's going to do something wonderful. And if I have anything to do with it, they're going to make it as wonderful as possible and as safe for them and generations to come.
Well, I've already raised my hand to be a part of that, however I can support it. And, it reminds me, my son went to Tampa Jesuit High School, and the Jesuits are tough, tough, tough teachers, tough masters. But the Jesuits have a motto, men for others. And I'm not being misogynistic, but you commit your life to others. And people ask why I got involved with you on taking care of Maya, and part of what convinced me to jump in with both feet as I did was the specialness of the Kowalski family. They are a remarkable family. And for them to be that together, that present, that emotionally stable, that caring and loving towards one another after all that they have been through, for Maya to have the poise, the tenacity, the strength that she has. I've told you this before. I believe that when I saw her testify and I saw that poise and that tenacity and that strength, I got a glimpse of who her mom was. And I never met Beata, obviously. But I saw who she was by looking at Maya that day. And Kyle reminds me so much of my son, of whom I am ridiculously proud.
And he's a wonderful kid.
Oh,
too.
my goodness. Oh, a heart as big as one outdoors. Yeah. Yeah.
Someone intelligent. He's got the whole package.
Yeah. And I'm happy. I will share that my understanding is that the three of them are actively healing. We'll say that they are in a good place. And they are finally, now that the verdict is in, able to get the support and help that will help them to get back to leading healthy, productive lives.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I think it's touch and go. I'll have more news. I cannot report it right now, but give me a few weeks. I'll have more information on and more about the future with them. I'm not in a position right now to say it. So the listeners know, I'm doing everything I possibly can, and Jennifer even more than me, to keep Maya and Kyle on the right track and help Jack as much as possible with getting through this, being a single dad. I was a single dad due to a particularly ugly divorce for a couple years with Caroline, and it is a very difficult role. So we're doing everything we can to give the family the advantage, because you can have as much money as possible, but if you don't have the friends and support around, it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah. So
Lost you for a second.
I'm sorry. What happens between now and January 22nd? I know that there's a lot of motions. I know that the judge set January 22nd as his deadline day.
Well, not much in terms of externally, the record for everybody to see. We're all waiting on the court to issue an order on their motions for directed verdict. And a directed verdict simply means that it's like a summary judgment. The plaintiffs have not sufficiently proven the elements of the cause of action, and you should direct a verdict in our favor because of that. We feel obviously very confident, since the court has denied that previously and denied it in 52 prior summary judgments, that he is ultimately going to deny all of those. We want to see what the court does in terms of their motions to remit, that is, cut down the damages, although they don't give the court any ideas. They just say it's too much. I am praying and deeply hope that Judge Carroll remembers what he said to me, that, he was there too. And what we were talking about with this being a very mature jury doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And I'm hopeful he won't cut it down at all. He might, but he shouldn't. And he knows that. But there may be other pressures. I don't know.
Yeah.
In any event, the big issue is what's going to happen when that judgment comes out.
Yeah.
If the court denies all of the directed verdict motions, which we hope and pray and think he will, then he will, in short order, enter a final judgment. And a final judgment in the law is a very, very big deal.
Yeah.
The way our system of justice is set up is that, okay, you had your day in court, you had 5 years to harass the other side and get all your information, you had 6 completely independent people decide right or wrong, and the amount of money, it's over. Here is the judgment of the court based on the jury's verdict. And so once we have the judgment, we will immediately, of course, record it in the public records. They have then 30 days to file a notice of appeal. And if they don't file it within 30 days, it's what is known as jurisdictional, which means that the appellate court, I think it's almost in the Constitution, but certainly in the rules, loses jurisdiction of the case if you don't file an appeal in 30 days, which means that even if it's 30 days in 1 hour, the appellate court just goes, sorry, lost jurisdiction, can't do anything. And then it's final and they got to pay. If they do file it within 30 days, then we have a right to receive, they will ask if we will waive the posting of an appellate bond, what otherwise known as a supersedious bond, which is to protect us from the appeal in case that, basically that it's to cover us no matter what. And one of the issues we're looking at is whether the Florida legislature capped it. It used to be the amount of the judgment plus 1.5 years of interest. So now they've capped it at 50 million. So the next question is that 50 million plus the interest? If it's plus the 1.5 years interest, then you're talking about another $30 million on top of it. So they have to post an $80 million bond. And those cost about 10%. So then,
and that's cost. They don't get that 10% back.
They do not.
Right.
They do not. And so at that point, and approximately, then they have 70 days to file a notice of appeal. But during this period of time, after the judgment, we will hopefully have a result from the investigation by the detective at St. Petersburg Police Department on the sexual assault of Maya. We have given 2 statements. I've been there. I've talked to her. I've made it very clear and shown her the statutes and absolutely positively defined that based on Maya's testimony and the corroborating evidence that this happened. What she chooses to do with that, I don't know. But if she chooses not to move forward with something that's clearly a crime, then we'll have a little discussion with the chief of police.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will get resolved around the same time, and we will then file suit on the second part of this. Since we already know so much about the relationships there, then it looks like we can successfully bring in Johns Hopkins Hospital Systems.
Mhm.
We'll immediately move for punitive damages. All of that will hit them around the same time. Um, and then, of course, we previously discussed the motion for attorney fees and costs, and
Yeah.
we will file that as soon as we have the judgment. We'll file that. So
Great.
all of those things will be happening, and the court can enter the final judgment and simply reserve jurisdiction for a determination of fees, costs, penalties, and interest. And by the way, the interest between the time the verdict was rendered and the judgment entered, if we're allowed to recover that, which we should, comes up to it's a big number. What am I thinking? It was like 990,000 or something. Might have been more than that. I seem to recall it was close to $1 million just for that period of time.
Yeah.
So the defense can then make a decision on whether they're going to proceed forward on the appeal, take the risk, or whether, but with these guys, I don't know.
So, Greg, do you expect that we're going to see everything come out all at once, or is it going to be kind of piece until we get to the 22nd?
I want to see the judge's ruling and what happens on the 22nd.
Okay.
I am putting together, and certainly we'll have drafts and things going on between now and then. If I file anything, of course, you'll be the first to know. But, I really would like to get that motion, but it's not really appropriate for me to file a motion for attorney fees until we have certain knowledge that we actually won the case, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to have that all ready to go, and we've got some spectacular expert witnesses to talk about hourly rates and the correct amount of money to award. The very finest Tom Edwards, who is the dean of medical malpractice attorneys in the state. I bow to him. He'd be somebody great to have on your show. He's I don't know how many hundreds of millions he's won. Tom's testifying for me. Former associate at our firm, who fantastic story in and of himself, Rick Block, who's at Morgan & Morgan.
Morgan. I know Rick. Yeah.
He's their chief trial counsel throughout the country and a very close friend, as is Tom. And so they've been kind enough to offer to assist me in it. It's going to be a real dog and pony show.
Yeah. I don't know Rick. I know of Rick. I know of his reputation. He's tenacious. He's talented.
He's tenacious. You should have him on the show. He's freaking hilarious. We have such a time together.
Sounds like we'd have to have the special rules apply when we have Mr. Block on.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want. So, speaking of monities, were you concerned at all when the yacht father mentioned insurance at the 11th and a half hour? Because I know they immediately jumped for a mistrial. Was that
blah blah?
Was that a serious threat or no?
Well, it could have been.
Okay.
If I had asked a question that elicited that,
Okay.
then it would have been it may have been a problem. But let me just say that, as the court pointed out, it was a solid, minute and a half from the last question. He
Yeah.
was throwing it in because he was trying to list assets.
Yeah.
He didn't know. He didn't know it in the
Right.
context of what he was testifying about. He assumed by
Right.
that point everybody had seen all the financials and knew
Right.
that there were, they had available insurance for some stuff, which,
Yeah.
by the way, one of the reasons the court was like is that you can't use liability insurance for punitive damages. It's
Right.
considered
Right.
against public policy.
Right.
So, I mean, I immediately, literally, while they were up there doing their happy dance and screaming and yelling, I looked at some of my files, because this isn't the first time I've faced this in 40 years. And there are a couple of second district court of appeal cases where people mentioned insurance multiple times in the course of
Okay.
the trial. And the second DCA said, this is a big yawn. We are in the 21st century. People are pretty sophisticated now.
Yeah.
As long as the court tells them it has nothing to do with this and it's not intentional, then don't bother us with this. We don't want
Okay.
this
Okay.
is not affecting a 21st century jury,
Yeah.
is essentially the message. So no, I know he felt bad. He shouldn't. And I told him 1,000 times over stone crabs last week, particularly. Uh, and, uh, and I said, you just did a magnificent job. And he testified just perfect for what we needed right then. So he did a spectacular job. I can get a jury all riled up. I'm fully capable of that.
Yeah.
But I didn't want that.
No.
I did not want that. I didn't want, and I could have theoretically upheld 3 times. So what is that? We had 250. I could have had up to 750 million in punitive damages,
Right.
and still not have had the presumption reduce me.
Right. Right.
And so coming in with 50 million, again, it just goes to show that the jury was paying freaking attention.
Yep.
It was not an emotional outburst.
Yep.
These people knew exactly what they were doing. And so the point of the story is I didn't want Steve, and that's one of the reasons why I had Nick do it, because I know me, and if I get the bit in my teeth,
Yeah.
it's hard to stop me. And me plus Steve up there, we might well have ended up with a $750 million or more verdict. And I didn't want that, because that's not likely to stand. And these people, my clients do not need to be in any more litigation. Let me say that.
No, sir, you shepherded them through the many years of a very tortuous process. Of course, they took on that tortuous process on the heels of losing their beloved matriarch. And so, and again, speaks to the strength of this incredible family. So I just want to share one more super chat comment from Enchiladas Unbreaded, which hands down, that's a top tier name, right? And the message is simple, Greg. It says, quote, just thank you.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, you're very, very welcome.
And Greg, I want to say thanks to you for giving me so much time tonight. I mean, Jennifer will skin me alive when I see her having kept you nearly 3 hours. But
she loves you.
You know, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I'm grateful for your being a party to this and sharing so many insights, so many inside baseball tidbits that I don't know that this audience really expected to hear tonight, but I'm grateful that you shared it.
I got
I told
1,000.
you, and that's the beauty of it. And that's why I want to have you back on. I'm ready to sign you up again.
I haven't even gotten into all my other crazy trials. Where did I tell you about Larry the Lizard? My custody battle, my 4-year custody battle over an 8-foot iguana.
Oh my God. Well, I will say that conversation, that story is going to have to wait because you have a good night ritual waiting for you with two
I've got to go.
very
I don't want to
loving
be
kids.
pushy, but yeah, I do.
Yes, sir.
Thanks everybody for watching. This is a fantastic host, one of my favorites, and so have me back sometime. I'll tell more funny stories.
Well, I will look forward. We all will look forward to that, Greg. Thank you so much, and give our best to your family. Wow. Wow. What a remarkable guy. And again, that's why I was willing to do the expert witness work and get involved, and everything about this situation was just so special, from the specialness of the Kowalski family to the specialness of the team that they engaged with Greg and Nick and Samantha and Gabby and Jennifer and everyone in that office that has given their blood, sweat, and tears for years and years and years to support this family. And in a situation where it became apparent to me early on that the hospital did them dirty. She can't keep up the charade 24/7. She's only 10 years old and doesn't realize when she's making physiologic mistakes. That doesn't sound like somebody who's trying to help a 10-year-old. That sounds like somebody who's trying to entrap a 10-year-old. Can we video her again so that we can get evidence before court? That doesn't sound like somebody who's trying to help a 10-year-old. I knew that would happen, just like I predicted. I predicted that the mom would die. There were mistakes made, and it is unfortunate. And the money will not bring Beata back. The money will not heal the family. Hopefully, the money induces Hopkins to do some self-reflection and to help build a better system. And I'm willing to help. I am willing to help Hopkins. I'm willing to help the state of Florida. I am willing to help all 50 states build a better system, because there's been a lot written in the hospital supportive press about the chilling effect that this case will have on mandatory reporting. And that's such a BS argument. This was not about mandatory reporting. Mandatory reporting saves lives, period, end of sentence. But it's not a process that we can only get right 95 or 97 or 99% of the time. We have to get it right every time. And if we don't get it right, then we've got to recognize it early. We can't recognize it after the fact. And keep in mind that the theory that the hospital had for separating Beata from Maya was that Beata was causing Maya to have symptoms, right? It was Munchausen by proxy. It was conversion disorder, whatever it was. They felt like the mom was causing the daughter's problems. And they separated them for 15 days, nothing changed. 30 days, nothing changed. 60 days, nothing changed. 90 days, nothing changed. At what point do you pull up and say, hey, maybe we need to think about something different, right? I'm willing and motivated to help build a better system. And I know that that's why you're part of this audience too. And God bless you all for being here. I think Greg Anderson, his whole team are just absolutely amazing people. And so, yeah, this was special. And my life is different and better because I was involved. Ruby, I'm sorry that I didn't get to your super chat question, and thank you very much for it. Granted, the defense were insert preferred expletives here. Please discuss the client responsibility. JHACH was responsible for the cause of this suit, signed off on all the ugly behavior by the attorneys. Shame on JHACH. You know, Ruby, this is a conversation that we've had on previous episodes. This is a conversation that I've had with Team Maya. And candidly, I don't know how much of this is being led by, you know, Howard and Ethan and company, and how much of it is being signed off on by JHACH. I think more and more JHACH and Hopkins in Baltimore are starting to own it, as evidenced by bringing in Mr. Steichleather and the other appeals attorney from Baltimore. But locally, I don't know how much they are micromanaging it. I think that from Baltimore, there will be a much higher level of management. So I think things are going to get interesting. They'll certainly be interesting between now and the 22nd of January. I think they're going to be interesting for, 6 to 12 months after that as well. Stay tuned. We're not done. Let me address some of the other questions that we were not able to get to. Kay Sheldon asked, would you, Paul, and Mr. Anderson meet in the future for lunch? I know that Paul, Juror 1, and Mr. Anderson met after the interview took place last week. And Paul and I have spoken. I actually found out that Paul went to my high school. He was a couple of years, he's younger than I am. A lot of people are. But his brother was actually a year ahead of me. So we are both Pace High Spartans out of Opelika, Florida, a suburb of Miami. He also was a law enforcement officer, a police officer, sergeant with the Hialeah Police Department. And I grew up in Miami Lakes, which is adjacent to Hialeah. And he and I actually have mutual friends from the force. A friend that I grew up with ended up being a cop in Hialeah as well. So Paul and Yoli and I will get together soon. And we will have lots to talk about, lots and lots to talk about. That's assuming that they'll have lunch with me. I know they're foodies, and I think the food's pretty good at this place down in Sarasota that I can get them to. So hopefully we can get out and enjoy a meal together soon. Catherine, who's responsible for jury 1 attorney's fees? Greg addressed that. Mr. Turfs is basically willing to be patient with payment, and I think that they see an opportunity to recoup their costs at some point in the future. Grass folk, Dr. Joe, can we have a career stream one day? I'd love to learn about how you navigated through your different pivots and how you became who you are. Grass folk, that's a great question, and I'm really honored that you would be interested in my story. And yeah, I would love to have that conversation with you. And if the broader audience is interested in it, we can talk about that too. But thank you. That's very thoughtful of you and very kind of you to ask. TACPay, I asked about the GoFundMe, and that's not needed at this point, but somebody else brought it up later in the chat. And if anything changes, trust me, I will make sure you're aware. Catherine, who's responsible for jury 1's attorney's fees? Sorry, we read that before. Alicia, the cake lady Kime, did Greg like my pink t-shirt, Team Maya t-shirt? Yes, he did. He loves seeing you in there, keeping Jules happy and content and calm, and your enthusiasm for the supporting the Kowalski family. Thank you. Pippa Hinchley, comedy. Whilst I love the detail and obvious rebuke in Judge C's last denial, should he not, as a matter of course, be formally sanctioning? Pippa, you're not the only one who wants to see sanctions come down. And I think that what we heard from Greg is that he's already dropped sanctions in earlier elements. And yeah, I think I'm hopeful. I am more hopeful about sanctions than many other hosts who are following the trial and the aftermath. Sunflower Day. Why can't the courts subpoena the agent? That would be the Joint Commission. We discussed that. Why was the trial heard in the South Courthouse instead of the Sarasota Courthouse? I believe it's because the families were located. The Kowalskis live closer to the Venice Courthouse, and I believe that that's why that venue was chosen. And let's admit it. Let's acknowledge that they built that courthouse to decompress how busy the Silvertooth Justice Center was in downtown Sarasota. That's where the subsequent hearings have been held. Julia Cochran, I understand why Judge was criticized for interview of J1, but don't you think he did the right thing so it's not an issue going forward? 100% agree with you. Oops. Sorry about that. Yes, Julia, I 100% agree with you. I think that had he not done it, it clearly would have been an element of the defense's appeal. I think that it will still be included in the defense's appeal, given that they tried to kick Juror 1 out before the trial was over and then tried to have him blown up with the interview. So I think it'll still be part of it. But I think the judge did a masterful job of granting the interview in a controlled environment. I know from the conversation that Judge Carroll had in the court during the trial, when the defense tried to have Juror 1 kicked off, he expressed confidence that not only had Juror 1 not done anything that constituted misconduct, but he had been actually an exemplary juror and was very engaged. And Judge Carroll actually said some incredibly powerful words of endorsement about the job that Juror 1 was doing. So I think that the judge threaded the needle and asked the questions that needed to be asked, but did not allow the incredibly invasive level of questioning and examination of cell phones and text messages and computers that the defense had requested. That would have been shocking if he had allowed that. I think the judge did a fantastic job. And again, I think that his judicial temperament is extraordinary. I think he's a very smart, and he's a judge that I could see going places within his career, and I would be happy to see his career advance. Can Maya's team request sanctions against Hopkins? I don't think so, but certainly sanctions against Hopkins representatives, yes. Hedgehog in space. If you knew then what you know now, what do you wish you'd done differently at the beginning of the case? You know what, Hedgehog? I did not get a chance to ask that of Greg. I will ask that when I speak with him and share that answer a little bit later. What's the point of threat of sanctions if not actually given? C. Taylor, they have been given. And I don't think it's unusual or unreasonable for Judge Carroll to take those under consideration and not rule until the juror interview was such a pivotal point in the decision tree. He had to get through that before everything else settles out, right? Because I mean, think about it this way: what if Juror 1, what if Paul had gotten up there and went, "Well, we didn't talk about a lot, but yeah, I talked with my wife about it." All right, that's that, and he didn't. But what if he did, hypothetically? the whole dynamic has changed, right? So he had to get through that. Now he will be ruling on all the motions, all the DVs, all the JNOVs, and the sanctions. So stay tuned. It's going to be a sporty 12 days between now and the 22nd. Mr. Anderson, do you have a pet? And if so, do they help you chill? Ah, I wish I'd asked that. You know, I've got my pet right here. Come here, Charlie. Come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, he's ignoring me. Charlie's right below me. I know Charlie helps me chill, and I don't think that Greg does currently have a pet, but I may be wrong. What was your reaction to Judge Denicia? Denicia, I know that I owe you some follow-up. I've been a little under the weather, and I will follow up with you and your amazing daughter, Annie. What was your reaction to Judge C's, it doesn't matter what he says, the fact that he's still bald? The tuft of justice was a very popular phrase, that's for sure. Love your question. LA, by the way, thank you for donating some memberships. I saw that earlier. Are you frustrated Judge Carroll is seemingly giving up on giving over anything with the scintilla of odor? I don't think that fight is over, LA. I don't think that fight is over. In fact, I know that it's not. I know that the judge was a little wishy-washy about it at the end of the interview hearing, but there's a lot more to be fought on that. And you know, the defense did not comply with the judge's order of turning everything over in 24 to 48 hours. So that's not over. And the judge may not be number one on his list of things to do. Trust me, it is in the gun sights for Greg and Nick. Dr. Joe, are you sitting with your pelvis in a neutral position? I am actually, Ariel, thank you for thinking about my back. I'm actually in a Herman Miller chair, which is ergonomically perfect. And I actually have two Herman Miller chairs for the two workspaces that I have in my house. So thank you. Yes, I am sitting with my pelvis in neutral position and protecting my back. Thank you so much. I love you guys, man. You guys are amazing. You guys are amazing. You really are looking out for me, and I'm grateful. Thank you. Great Dane Mom, Mr. Greg, come back to Idaho. The snow is here. I will share that with him. I don't think Greg minded that it wasn't snowing in Idaho. I know that his kids were a little miffed, but I don't think he minded one bit. Greg Anderson, don't you think Judge C's last response order was amazing? Yeah, Julia Cochran, we discussed that, and it was a real backhand to the defense, and very smartly told them to knock it off. You can argue if it was a day late and a dollar short, but you know what? He told him to knock it off. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Carla Bravo, sanctions should be granted against Judge Carroll for questioning Juror 1. I disagree, Carla, for the reasons that I stated before. I think that he needed to do it. And for something that he did not, it was something that he had to do. I think he did it very well. Pam D, how hard did you laugh when you read Judge Carroll's supposition? That is tough to bear. I think we all got a good laugh about that for sure. Let me see. Lois Thomas, can Maya get her juvenile records unsealed now that she's 18? What juvenile records would you want her to have unsealed? Lois, if there's a question behind that, please put it in the chat. I don't know what juvenile records are sealed that she would want unsealed. I don't think she. Let me hear more about it. Rainbow Rising. Why shouldn't the defense complain about what they did? Outrageous, childish lies. When Judge Carroll never addressed their behavior, he let them do whatever, which baffled me. You know, I think that both sides were given a long leash. I think the defense took full advantage of that long leash. Lauren Elizabeth, the sanction exhibits that were filed along with 327-page motion is still sealed. It was supposed to be unsealed within 10 days, but that was months ago. Can it be unsealed? I'll ask. Laura and Elizabeth, I will ask that question and bring it into a future conversation. Lois Thomas again, same question. Denise Rose, if a whistleblower handed you the IJ report, would you be able to accept it? Yes. And effectively, the Tampa Bay Times was the whistleblower. Bring that dog around. You want to be on? No. All right. Here's Charlie the Wonder Dog. This is our puppy. He is 8 years old, 9 years old. He's at least 8. He is a Shih Tzu Havanese mix. We rescued him from Underdog in Bradenton. We went in for a big dog, and we ended up bringing home this little ball of fluff. And Charlie's been amazing. Charlie was named after Je suis Charlie, after the Charlie Hebdo terror attack, when everyone was supporting the French. And so he has been fabulous, but he wants the key lime pie that my creative, amazing daughter made in the Triple G kitchen tonight. So he doesn't want me. He wants the key lime pie. Thank you for bringing him in. Courtney, have you tried working with the State Protection and Advocacy Agency to see if they can acquire the IJ? Oh, Courtney B, that's an interesting idea. I will share that with the legal team. Angela Carl, why did Judge Carroll not insist the defense turn over the IJ report as he wanted everything? I don't think, well, first of all, the IJ came in at as close to midnight as you could get, right? I mean, it was literally, we talked about it on the day that we were supposed to be, that the case was supposed to be going to the jury. That's how late it was. So had we been able to bring in the IJ earlier in the trial, I don't think that they would have been able to hide the football. But the conversation started so late in the process that we just didn't have time. And quite candidly, we got in what we needed. I was watching Paul, Juror 1, interviewed on, I think it was on Megan's show, when he talked about how when I was able to talk about the IJ, it connected a lot of dots. So we brought in what we needed to bring in. And Paul has shared that the jury, he as a juror, suspected that there was more to the story. And that was kind of an aha moment for him. So yeah, so again, had it happened earlier in the game, I think we'd be talking about something very different. See, Chinny, what's next after Maya? They have a very full portfolio of cases, including more like Maya that involve CPT and DCF and what have you. That's not what they do primarily, however. I know that they are a very, very busy law firm, and they are going to have lots of inbound opportunity. But they're a small law firm, and they're not going to be able to say yes to everybody. Again, this case was so specific and so special. Mr. Anderson, from Tommy Jones, do you think if JHACH lawyers will ever get sanctions? Well, they did already. They've been sanctioned at least twice, and Greg said that they were sanctioned at least once. Nancy Drewby, does Greg think that the defense is worried at all about the interest amounts that will be accruing? The defense isn't. The hospital sure as hell is. I mean, it's 50, Jules, what's the number? I think it's $57,000 of interest per day. Per day. Monday through Sunday. That includes Saturdays and Sundays, guys. $57,000 a day. You bet that the hospital and the health system will be worried about the money, for sure. If settlement was ever reached, What would it take? What would that take away the sanction motions? I don't believe so. They are separate. Um, did Kyle get dropped from the suit? I only see, this is from KM Hope. I only see Jack, Maya, and Jack Forbiata on the motions now. Jack and Maya are the only adults in the case. Maya turned 18, so she is now an adult. That happened before um, the motions hearing on December 15th, and that was actually discussed in that hearing. So she is now treated as an adult for filings, and that's why she and Jack. Kyle is still a minor, so he is not dropped. He is still very much involved. Celine Shoup, we talked about Boatman's comment. Did JHACH make a settlement offer? Celine, that is not something that they can discuss. So I think that we got to all of your questions. I hope that we got to all of your questions. Michael Boyle, welcome to being a Street Fighter advocate. Snow, thank you so much for your shout out. Crazy by Proxy, welcome to being an advocate. Here for the Truth, thank you both for all you did, do, and will do. Oh, thank you, Here for the Truth. We are, it's interesting. Greg and I have developed a really nice friendship, and we have had a lot of conversations about how profoundly impacted our lives have been and continue to be as a result of this trial. And, we're not done. We're not done. We may be done with working together on trials, but we're not done on advocating to make the system better. Again, this is not a system that can be 98% good. It can't be 99% good. Got to try to get to that 99.999%. So we ain't done, and I'm counting on you each for being a part of this. We've got a lot of opportunity, not just in the state of Florida, not just on this issue. Remember, one of the reasons why we are here is to leave our surroundings not as good, not as beautiful, but more beautiful than it was left for us. We have a lot of opportunity there, and I'm really excited about where 2024 is going to take us. When I was laying around over the Christmas holidays with my back pain and had time to think, I actually wrote down some ideas about what I want to accomplish in 2024 with this. We'll discuss it. We've been on for 3+ hours tonight. I don't want to keep anybody any longer, but we've got some really great opportunities. And I will tell you one of the things that I'm super proud about. So my son had a little bit of a health issue, nothing major, but it was more painful than it was serious. And my wife took him to the pediatrician's office, and the doctor started asking him questions, and he was asking questions of my wife, Christian's mom, and Christian stepped up and started answering questions and asking for questions and challenging assumptions and challenging the doctor's answers. And the doctor, who was young, looked at my son, who was 18, he's young, and said, "You're doing a very good job of speaking up for yourself." And Patty almost dropped her jaw and her phone. Christian's response was, "I am an advocate." Oh my gosh, it made me so proud. And I've already shared with many of you that I will be introducing you later this month to a young lady named Annie, and her mom Denicia. And Annie is even younger than my son, and she too has learned to advocate for herself. And I want to share their story with this audience. That's one of the things that we need to build out a lot of in 2024. Is we've got to be advocating for ourselves, and we've got to be advocating for others. But it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting. I'm super excited about about what we can do together. With that, folks, I'm going to call it a night. This has been phenomenal. Greg is amazing. You guys are amazing. And this, I'm sorry that I've been MIA for so many weeks. The back pain is better, 100%. Thank you for your support and your prayers. The flu was a bear, but I'm over that. I did get started on antibiotics last night for pneumonia, but 24, 36 hours later, I feel worlds better. I could not have done this marathon last night. So thank you for all your love, all your support, all your prayers, all your powerful, positive vibes. We're in this together, guys, and I feel it every day. You guys are amazing. Make sure that you take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. That's not selfish. It's smart. So take care of yourselves. Let's take care of others together. Okay. I will post tomorrow about the next show. I'm grateful for you guys being here. And I love this world that we're creating. Thanks very much. Good night, and take care of yourself before you take care of others. Take care. Bye-bye.